Chapter 838, Raging Market. Lake Heart City was currently a prime tourist spot for players, as the city itself was like heaven on earth. Many casual players or players who wished to get away from the front lines would often visit this city. However, those who preferred adventuring and battling rarely visited the city. Most of the leveling maps around Lake Heart City were either located underwater or shrouded in mist. Both environments affected a player's combat power considerably. Hence, very few players wishing to level up and go on adventures would reside in Lake Heart City. Due to players reaching higher levels and the increasing number of maps and dungeon bosses requiring high ice resistance, the presence of the ice jades eventually attracted a lot of attention to Lake Heart City. In the past, the city had very quickly gained popularity, becoming the 6th most populous city in the Black Dragon Empire. The prices of land there had skyrocketed overnight. Feng never imagined that he would receive such a fortunate offer as a result from selling the strengthening devices. After agreeing on the trade conditions, Feng and Phoenix Rain decided to meet up in White River City. If one wanted to trade lands, they needed to do it through a city hall through either of two methods. The first method was a relatively fast but troublesome process, while the second method was simple but time-consuming. Feng usually left the responsibility of purchasing lands to Aqua Rose and Melancholic Smile. They would then transfer the ownership of these lands to him through a random city hall. This way he didn't need to make a trip to the city hall. However, this method of transferring ownership had a verification period of 1 day. The other method was for him to go to the relevant city hall in person. By doing so, he could complete the transfer procedures immediately. Currently, Feng was in no hurry to obtain the land in Lake Heart City. Hence, there was no need for him to travel there personally to complete the transfer of ownership. During the time Feng and Phoenix Rain were chatting with each other, one notification after another popped up in Feng's system notification window. System: the 20 strengthening devices you placed on auction have been sold. After the deduction of the processing fees, a total of 164 gold 85 silver has been added to your bag space. System: the 20 strengthening devices you placed on auction have been sold. After the deduction of the processing fees, a total of 165 gold 64 silver has been added to your bag space. During the short time since Feng left the auction house, the amount of money in his bag had increased by over 1,000 gold. The rate at which he was earning money was just staggering. This handling fee is simply usurious. Feng felt a pang in his heart when he looked at the actual amount of money he had obtained from the sales. Although the current handling fee was not as high as that of the monthly auction, it was still 20%. He could have purchased many good plots of land with all the handling fees he had paid. Feng could not help but admit that the auction house was extremely profitable. Unfortunately, current players were still incapable of establishing their own auction houses. The precondition for doing so was having a city of their own. Following which, Feng teleported back to White River City and prepared to head to the library. The golden tablet held a great temptation for Feng. A secret technique was a treasure that could allow players to learn advanced combat techniques directly. To guilds, not to mention several epic weapons, even the value of a fragmented legendary weapon was incomparable to that of a secret technique. If he could obtain the golden tablet, it would definitely improve the overall strength of Zero Wing's core members by a large margin. Upon exiting the teleportation hall, Feng took out the dark gold whistle from his bag and blew it gently. As the sound of the whistle rang out, a magic array appeared on the street. The demonic flame tiger then emerged from the magic array. The body of the demonic tiger was roughly the size of a small house. The black flames that surrounded its sharp claws sent the ambient temperature rising by several degrees. The instant the demonic flame tiger appeared, the players on the street were immediately stupefied. Why did a monster suddenly appear here? Could monsters be attacking the city? That's not right. Why aren't any of the guards on patrol reacting? The onlookers grew flustered as they stared at the demonic flame tiger. Not only did it possess an intimidating appearance, but the aura leaking out of its body also made their hearts shiver in fear. Even the elite players sensed a massive threat from the demonic flame tiger. Feng could not help but smirk as he swept a glance at the immobilized players. He then walked up to the demonic flame tiger. This was a dark gold mount. Its strength was equivalent to a level 40 chieftain. Naturally, it is not something ordinary players could handle. Has that person lost his mind? He's actually going up to it? Is he not afraid of getting killed? Everyone thought that Feng had lost himself to fear as they watched him approach the demonic flame tiger. However, when they saw the demonic flame tiger obediently lie down before Feng and enjoy Feng's caress agreeably, their mouths fell wide open. However, an even more shocking scene occurred in the next moment as Feng mounted the demonic flame tiger. "Let's go!" Feng shouted lowly. Suddenly, the demonic tiger let out a loud roar and took a step forward. It then transformed into an afterimage that disappeared before everyone. "What? That's a mount. I'm not seeing things right? Who is that person? That giant tiger mount looks so cool." No one dared believe what they just saw. Riding a mount was still a faraway dream for them. Even if they managed to reach level 40 eventually, amassing a fortune of 40 gold was not that easy. It would be even more impossible for them to ride a bronze or mysterious iron mount. While Feng was rapidly making his way towards the library, the players present on the street outside the teleportation hall went into a frenzy. Every one of them was madly posting on the official forums. "A hero riding a giant tiger has appeared in White River City." Many people initially did not believe the words written in this post. After all, the number 1 players on the various Empire ranking lists were only at level 39. These players were still a long way off from reaching level 40. How could there possibly be someone capable of riding a high-ranking mount right now? After watching the recorded video, everyone was shocked. There were some who felt admiration, some who felt jealousy, and some who felt pride. There were also many people trying to guess at Feng's identity. Just who was actually capable of riding such a mount? Unfortunately, as Feng had hidden his face using the black cloak, nobody could discern his identity. A dark gold mount sure is fast. Even an advanced horse carriage is far inferior to it. This was also Feng's first time riding a dark gold mount. The speed of the mount was simply incomparable to fine gold mounts. The demonic flame tiger's speed was at least 20% or 30% faster than an advanced horse carriage. Just as Feng was quickly approaching the library, he suddenly received a call from Autumn Goose. When Feng accepted the call, the image of an anxious Autumn Goose appeared before him. What happened? Feng could not help but ask after seeing her apprehensive expression. "Feng, Gunfire contacted me just now, saying that a group of players that had suddenly appeared is hunting Rain and Blue. These players are very powerful and are capable of doubling the death penalty of the players they killed. Moreover, they also have a means of jamming a player's communications. However, I'm currently not in Starmoon Kingdom. Can you please go save them?" Autumn Goose asked worriedly. After reaching their level, even a single death was a painful loss. If their death penalties were doubled, the cost of dying once would be devastating. However, she could not come up with a good method to save Thoughtful Rain and the others at the moment. The only person she could think of right now who might be of help in this situation was Feng. "Where are they now?" Feng was initially stunned, but he immediately said in a hurried tone, "I'll head over there right away." Feng had never imagined that there would actually be people who would still dare to take action against Zero Wings members within the boundaries of Starmoon Kingdom at this point. Chapter 839, Crystal Maze. Hearing Feng answer without hesitation, Autumn Goose was touched. She also felt slightly envious. The reason why she had joined an independent organization like the Wind God's Spear was precisely how the people within the organization treated each other like family. If one of them got bullied, they would fearlessly help out their companions regardless of the cost. They did not behave like guild members who had to worry about various aspects even when helping out a companion. Generally, players in the upper echelons of guilds like Feng were even less likely to make a move casually. People in his position would usually ascertain what kind of enemy they were going up against first and make a decision only after determining the potential profits and losses. However, Feng had not done any of this. Instead of asking who their enemy was, the first thing Feng wanted to know was the whereabouts of Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. Such a situation generally would never happen in a guild. Some experts ambushed Rain and the others at the Crystal Forest. The enemies were wearing black cloaks, so they did not find out anything about those experts. Moreover, their ambushers operated silently. Fortunately, Rain and Blue managed to use the instantaneous movement scrolls you gave them before to escape. However, based on what Gunfire told me, those people were there specifically to kill Rain and Blue. They definitely will not let them get away. Here are the coordinates of where the ambush took place. You have to be careful, Autumn Goose said as she sent the map coordinates to Feng. I understand. I'll hurry there immediately. After seeing the coordinates of the Crystal Forest, Feng silently committed it to memory. He quickly turned the demonic flame tiger around and headed straight for the teleportation hall. Despite the low odds for Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo's rescue, when Autumn Goose heard Feng's calm and steady tone, for some reason she felt relieved. The travel time from White River City to the Crystal Forest aside, just getting from the nearest transfer point to where Thoughtful Rain's group got ambushed would require at least 2 hours. Although Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo had escaped using the instantaneous movement scrolls, current players had many more skills than before, which made tracking other players much easier. Moreover, the enemies chasing after Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo had somehow managed to keep them in a combat state, preventing them from using return scrolls. Even logging out of the game normally was not possible, as the system would directly mete out the death penalty if they went offline while in a combat state. Please let Rain and the others make it. At this moment, the only other thing Autumn Goose could do was pray. She was currently in the faraway Dark Knight Empire. She would need even more time than Feng to reach the Crystal Forest. The core area of the Crystal Forest was rife with trees made out of crystals. Currently, over a dozen players covered in black cloaks were searching there. Damn it. Coral, have you not found their tracks yet? Boss Hell Fiend has already given the word that we must kill those core members of Zero Wing, Ordinary Stranger asked in a low tone as he looked at a distant assassin. They had already gathered information regarding the whereabouts of many of Zero Wing's core members. However, the majority of those members were currently grinding in the Stoneclaw Mountains. It would take Ordinary Stranger's team over a dozen hours of travel just to get there. As for the remaining core members, they were raiding team dungeons. They were unlikely to leave the dungeons anytime soon. The only ones nearby were Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who had been seen grinding with Zero Wing's upper echelon before. However, he had never imagined that even those 2 women would succeed in escaping his ambush. In the end, his team had only managed to kill 2 unrelated independent players. If this matter were to reach the adjudicator's ears, his team's days in King's Return would no doubt be numbered. Do you think it is that easy to track players here? The assassin named Coral rolled his eyes at Ordinary Stranger. He then swept a glance at the surrounding crystal shrubbery, gnashing his teeth as he said, "Those 2 beauties sure know how to run. They actually reached this crystal maze. If not for this natural maze, I would have long since found them by now. However, rest assured, although the terrain here is complex, this place has only one exit. The 2 of them cannot use return scrolls right now. They also cannot log off normally. It is only a matter of time before we find them." Good then. Thunder and I will guard the exit. You guys head inside and search for those 2. We need to kill them as quickly as possible. Don't forget, we don't have much time left. We still need to deal with the other members of Zero Wing, Ordinary Stranger instructed. I understand. Coral also began hastening his search. Aside from Coral, the other members of the team paired off and began searching the crystal maze. Rain, what are we going to do? Those people are still chasing after us. If we head in any further, we will arrive at the lair of the crystal wolves. Blue Bamboo's heart began palpitating as she looked at the patrolling pack of crystal wolves some distance away. These crystal wolves were incomparably powerful. In order to complete a crystal collection quest, they had also personally experienced the strength of these monsters. Previously, when Feng had led them to kill the crystal wolf packs, they had not felt these monsters to be much of a threat. However, after returning to this place again by themselves, they found out just how difficult and exhausting dealing with these monsters was. Alone, a single wolf pack was not particularly scary. However, if they did not kill these crystal wolves quickly enough, these monsters would summon more companions in the vicinity, instantly bolstering their numbers by several times. Sometimes, the crystal wolves would also draw special elites, or even chieftain-ranked monsters. Fortunately, when the chieftain appeared, they had Death Wind to tank it. Otherwise, they would have died without a doubt. Only they had never imagined that, rather than dying to the level 45 chieftain, Death Wind would die at the hands of cloaked players that had suddenly appeared instead. If not for Death Wind and gunfire delaying those people, they would not have had a chance to use the instantaneous movement scrolls that Feng had given to them for emergencies. Currently, there were crystal wolves all around them. If they moved deeper into the maze, the possibility of discovery by a wolf pack would increase as well. In which case, by the time those cloaked players caught up to them, these crystal wolves would have long since killed them already. We can only give it a shot. We'll use an invisibility potion and continue forward. Hopefully these wolf packs can buy us enough time. Thoughtful Rain gritted her teeth as she looked at her own status window. She then took out 2 invisibility potions and gave one of the bottles to Blue Bamboo. Both of them were currently afflicted with the soul lock debuff. As long as they were out in the fields, they would not be able to contact anybody for 5 hours. Their attackers had also forced them into a constant combat state, which prevented them from using their return scrolls. Arbitrarily logging out of the game would result in them suffering the death penalty immediately. While Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo snuck deeper into the crystal maze, Feng had already arrived at the crystal forest. I finally caught up. Feng tapped on the demonic flame tiger, storing it away as he looked at the crystal forest before him. He then opened the map for the crystal forest. Even now, Autumn Goose had yet to contact him again. This silence meant that Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo were still alive. The enemy is extraordinary. The fact that Rain and Blue have remained at large suggests that they entered the crystal forest's core area, the crystal maze. Hopefully I can make it in time. After taking a glance at the map, Feng used space movement, the activatable skill of the aura of space. Space movement allowed him to cross up to 600,000 yards instantly. He could easily traverse the entire crystal forest or move to any location within the map. If not for this skill, he would not have made it to the crystal forest so quickly either. Now that the skill's cooldown was over, he could use it once again. In the blink of an eye, Feng appeared at a location close to the crystal maze's entrance. Guarding the entrance as well? It seems you guys really are targeting Zero Wing. The instant Feng appeared in the area, he immediately noticed the cloaked ordinary stranger and Thunder Tiger keeping watch at the entrance of the crystal maze, their eyes radiating cold killing intent. Chapter 840 Magic Staff. Just when Feng noticed ordinary stranger and Thunder Tiger, the two of them caught sight of Feng. Brat, I don't know how you suddenly appeared here, but since you've come to this place, you can only consider yourself unlucky, Thunder Tiger, who had hidden his identity and appearance, said when he suddenly saw the similarly anonymous Feng. Taking the initiative, he walked towards Feng. All this waiting around has made me annoyed. Old stranger, you better not make a move. I'm gonna use this brat here to relieve some of my stress. Sure, but the equipment he drops will belong to me, Ordinary Stranger laughed. Ordinary Stranger had discovered Feng's presence the instant Feng had appeared. Initially he had thought that a powerful enemy had shown up. However, after some close observation he did not sense any threat coming from beneath the black cloak. On the contrary, he had noticed many holes in Feng's defense. If not for Thunder Tiger declaring his claim, Ordinary Stranger would have long since taken action to remove this ant. However, even if the opponent were an expert, it would not matter. Thunder Tiger was a top-tier expert of King's Return. Currently he was already level 38. Placed in Starmoon Kingdom, his level would rank within the top 10. Not to mention he was fully geared in level 35 Dark Gold equipment. His maximum HP was as high as 14,600. His combat standard was also at the refinement realm already. Dealing with 2 or 3 ordinary experts simultaneously would be child's play for him. Even if the opponent were an expert of the same combat standards, Thunder Tiger was a refinement realm expert of King's Return. The guild had long since presented the Berserker with a Berserk skill. As long as Thunder Tiger activated this Berserk skill, he could kill a refinement realm expert easily. He could even defeat a flowing water realm expert. In the off chance that Thunder Tiger was no match for this new arrival, Ordinary Stranger himself could still back up the Berserker. If he and Thunder Tiger worked together, they would be practically invincible in Starmoon Kingdom. Only Zero Wing's Black Flame and Yi Feng could cause them to feel fear. No one else was worth mentioning. As soon as Ordinary Stranger finished speaking, Thunder Tiger retrieved a two-handed saber from his back and used charge at Feng. When using charge, controlling the sudden increase in speed was extremely difficult for ordinary players. As a result, they would usually reveal flaws in their attack. However, Thunder Tiger was different. He had long since mastered this skill. By adjusting his center of gravity, he had managed to apply his increased speed to his attack, creating his own charging slash. He had transformed a system-generated skill into a personal skill. Not only did his saber speed up, but the power contained within it also increased. Even a shield warrior of the same level would have to retreat several steps, breaking their stance. Boom. As the two-handed saber landed, sparks scattered into the surroundings. A silver one-handed sword actually stopped Thunder Tiger's lightning-fast saber. What? Thunder Tiger was shocked as he stared at Feng standing steadily in his original position. The charging slash getting blocked did not come as a surprise to Thunder Tiger. However, this was his first time to encounter an enemy who could remain standing steadily after receiving his charging slash. Even Broken City, an Elder of King's Return, had to retreat half a step after receiving this attack of his. This situation was simply inconceivable. "Tiger, be careful. We've got a tough one." Ordinary Stranger warned hurriedly after realizing that their enemy this time was no common player. As he began casting a spell, he added, "We'll deal with him together." "I understand." Thunder Tiger's expression had turned serious as well, the contempt he felt before disappearing completely. He promptly used Whirlwind Slash in an attempt to drive Feng away. However, as soon as he started swinging his gray saber, a streak of blue light struck his weapon. A crack in space also appeared along the path the blue light had taken. Puh! Thunder Tiger felt his hands going numb as his saber came to an abrupt halt. It felt as if he had just struck an iron wall. Immediately after, however, a powerful impact shook him, forcing him to retreat 4 steps before he could stabilize his body. Damage of -1,338 points appeared above the berserker's head. He had instantly lost close to 10% of his HP. "Who are you?" At this moment, even if Thunder Tiger were a fool, he would understand that the man before him was definitely stronger than himself. In just a single exchange of skills, he had lost over 1,000 HP. Feng's strength could practically rival a chieftain of the same level. Before Thunder Tiger could react, a streak of blue light instantly slashed his body. Although the berserker had tried to defend himself with his saber, he was simply no match for the speed of the sword light. -7,151. The lightning effect having triggered, Feng's attack instantly took away half of Thunder Tiger's HP. The berserker himself also went flying over 10 yards away. "Who am I?" At this time Feng laughed. "You dared to come and find trouble with Zero Wing, yet you still ask who I am." Hearing Feng saying so, whether it was Thunder Tiger or Ordinary Stranger, both of them immediately shuddered as a name appeared in their minds. Sword King Black Flame. Why is he here? Ordinary Stranger's expression darkened, his heart roiling with confusion. Their operation this time was top secret. They had even placed a soul lock on the targets of their ambush. The 2 women should have no way of contacting anyone from Zero Wing. Hence, the possibility of them encountering Black Flame here was practically non-existent. Yet now Black Flame had appeared before them. However, Ordinary Stranger gave no further thought to this matter. Since Black Flame was here, there was only one thing they could do right now. Escape. They had next to no chance of winning against Black Flame in a direct confrontation. Their only hope for resisting Black Flame was to meet up with the Falcon Legion. In the next moment, Ordinary Stranger waved his staff and cast the Tier 1 spell Summon Flame Spirit. A level 38 special elite flame lizard appeared immediately. Following which, he used one of the activatable skills of his magic staff, Undead Sacrifice. Suddenly, the flame lizard let out an agonized wail as the red flames covering its body turned into an emerald green, its body doubling in size. Its rank had increased from special elite to lord as well. Undead Lizard, Undead Lord. Level 38. HP 3 600 000/3 600 000. Such a powerful monster was more than enough to deal with a top-tier expert. Moreover, as a summoner, he could form a soul link with his summoned creature, which allowed him to transfer 50% of the damage he received to it. However, Ordinary Stranger knew quite well that even with the Undead Lizard, Thunder Tiger and he were still no match for Feng. They had a very clear understanding of just how powerful experts of Feng's standard were. He had summoned the Undead Lizard only to delay Feng. The Undead Lizard was a speed-type monster. At the same time, it possessed multiple control skills. It could surely pin down Feng and give them an opportunity to escape. Retreat. Ordinary Stranger waved his staff and shot elemental bullets at Feng. Simultaneously, he willed the Undead Lizard forward to attack Feng. Thunder Tiger no longer held back either as he activated his Berserk skill, Heart of Fury. The skill instantly increased his strength by 80%, his endurance by 50%, and his movement speed and attack speed by 50% for 2 minutes. After activating his Berserk skill, Thunder Tiger turned around and fled without hesitation. Looking at the oncoming elemental bullets and Undead Lizard, Feng sneered and said, "Don't you think it's a little too late to be escaping now?" Saying so, he abruptly stabbed the abyssal blade into the ground. Chapter 841, Taboo Skills Might. You're not getting away. Feng deflected the elemental bullets using Killing Ray while activating one of the Abyssal Blade skills. Abyssal Curse. Immediately, a black magic array appeared on the ground. With Feng as the center, it covered a radius of 30 yards, instantly enveloping the undead lizard, which was the size of a small house, as well as Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger. Endless streams of black mist flowed into their bodies. Not good. It's an AoE control skill. Ordinary Stranger frowned. Right now, it felt as if his body was stuck in quicksand. He could not move at all. He had never imagined that Feng would have such a trump card as well. At this moment, not to mention him, even the Lord-ranked undead lizard was immobilized. As a result, Feng had readily broken through the Lord's defensive line and was currently charging rapidly at them. Tiger, delay him, buy me some time. Ordinary Stranger no longer tried to hold back as he activated his Berserk skill, Mana Detonation, his attributes increasing by a large margin. At the same time, he used Mental Exemption, becoming immune to all control effects for 5 seconds. He then began chanting an incantation, causing the surrounding mana to churn violently. Thunder Tiger nodded in response to Ordinary Stranger's instructions. Activating Brilliant Will, he removed the control effect of Abyssal Curse, then shifted in front of his summoner companion. Come. Let me have a look at the abilities of the Sword King. Thunder Tiger bellowed as he stomped down, shattering the ground underfoot. He then swung his two-handed saber abruptly at the swordsman rushing straight at him. Tier 1 skill Storm Slash. Over a dozen wind blades flew at Feng, every one of them targeting his blind spots. Unlike the normal attacks of players, the wind blades of Storm Slash appeared simultaneously. There was no time lag between each attack, preventing Feng from evading them entirely. Moreover, Storm Slash was a skill that could not be blocked, only dodged. It was an extremely rare skill of the Berserker class. This skill was also the trump card Thunder Tiger usually used to kill experts of equal standards. For players who did not know the intricacies of this skill, they would generally defend themselves with their weapons. The outcome of doing so would be these players receiving the strikes of the dozen or so wind blades. Currently, Thunder Tiger had his Berserk skill activated. The destructive power of his Storm Slash could easily instant-kill Feng. Try to block it if you can. Thunder Tiger could not help but sneer as he saw Feng remaining steadfast in his charge forward. Unfortunately for Thunder Tiger, he had grossly underestimated Feng's understanding of God's domain. When the wind blades arrived before Feng, he was already within 20 yards of Thunder Tiger. He promptly used the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike. Suddenly, Feng vanished before the wind blades of Storm Slash and reappeared in front of Thunder Tiger, faint arcs of electricity circling Feng's body. Thunder Tiger panicked. He instinctively executed Whirlwind Slash. However, before the Berserker's Whirlwind Slash could complete even half a rotation, numerous blue arcs of lightning devoured him whole. In the next moment, Thunder Tiger's HP dwindled at a rate visible to the naked eye until it finally hit 0. How is he so fast? Thunder Tiger's eyes widened as he looked at where the strikes had landed. He simply could not bring himself to believe that what he was seeing was real. He had activated his Berserk skill. He should have received significant improvements in speed, yet he still failed to keep up with Feng's swords. Not to mention his body, before his eyes could even react, the swordsman's swords had cut through him multiple times. This was definitely his first time witnessing such speed. Standing a short distance away, fear similarly covered Ordinary Stranger's face. He had never dreamed that Thunder Tiger would not manage to delay Feng for even a short while despite having activated his Berserk skill. Fortunately, Feng was still roughly 10 yards away. The time it would take for the swordsman to reach Ordinary Stranger was more than enough for him to finish casting his spell. At that time, although the spell would not kill Feng at the very least, it would help buy Ordinary Stranger time to escape. Where is he? During the brief moment Ordinary Stranger was lost in his thoughts, Feng, who had been standing in front of Thunder Tiger, actually vanished. Wah! Suddenly, Ordinary Stranger felt a pang at his heart. Without him noticing, a long sword wrapped in blue electric arcs had emerged from his chest. You! Turning his head around, Ordinary Stranger discovered Feng standing right behind him. He had actually failed to notice the swordsman approaching him altogether. It was as if Feng's presence was completely non-existent. Seeing his HP decreasing without any signs of stopping, Ordinary Stranger was at a loss for words. He and Thunder Tiger were both top-tier experts of King's Return. They could easily become top-class existences in any kingdom they went to. Although he had long since known that he and his berserker companion were no match for Feng, he had never imagined that the gap between them was actually so enormous. At this moment, even if he related everything that had happened here to someone else, most likely nobody would believe him. Although Ordinary Stranger still wished to say something, he was already out of time as his vision suddenly turned gray, his body falling to the ground. When he died, he dropped 2 pieces of cloth armor. There were actually 2 refinement realm experts. It's no wonder Rain and the others were no match for them. Although Feng had failed to discover the identities of thoughtful Rain's assailants, he clearly grasped the combat standards of the 2 from the battle just now. With the strength of those 2 players, they would be hard-pressed to find any opponents capable of opposing them. Unfortunately for them, they had encountered him today. Not to mention he had even activated a Tier 2 Taboo skill to deal with them. Following which, Feng picked up the items that the 2 dropped. He then summoned the demonic flame tiger and headed straight into the crystal maze. Deep inside the crystal maze, the members of the Falcon Legion were currently busy clearing out the crystal wolves blocking their path. They were moving increasingly closer to the lair of the crystal wolves. These 2 beauties sure know how to run. They're hiding wherever there is danger. However, let's see how you'll continue escaping once you enter the lair of the crystal wolves, Quirrell muttered as he switched his footwork. Like a black gale, the dagger in his hand struck at a level 45 special elite wolf. Without giving the special elite wolf any opportunity to react, Quirrell landed blow after blow with his daggers. Although the special elite tried to resist, none of its attacks could connect with the assassin's body. Little by little, Quirrell plundered away the special elite's HP, wielding the pitch-black daggers in his hands rapidly. A short moment later, the special elite wolf, whose HP had been in the hundreds of thousands, fell to the ground. From start to end, the wolf had never once managed to land a hit on Quirrell. Team leader Quirrell sure is amazing. His skill level has improved again. In the guild's next class competition, his ranking will no doubt increase once more, a nearby level 37 female assassin said, her face filled with admiration as she looked at Quirrell. Don't make a fool of yourself. Team leader Quirrell has very high expectations. With your standards, do you think you will be able to gain his favor? Let's just hurry up and clear away these crystal wolves. Otherwise, they're going to call for more reinforcements. If we make team leader Quirrell angry, we'll definitely suffer miserably, a level 37 male ranger criticized. The female assassin, who possessed an above-average appearance and figure, remained unperturbed by the ranger's comment. Instead, she retorted, "Hee, so what if I'm trying to gain his favor? If you were as capable as team leader Quirrell, I would try to gain your favor too." In the opinion of outsiders, once one became an inner member of a super guild, a wonderful future awaited them. In reality, however, this was a big misconception. Super guilds were far crueler than other guilds. The competition among its inner members was extremely intense. All those who managed to become a part of the middle management of the guild were indeed experts among experts, dragons among men. They were experts who could easily wipe the floor with the so-called top 10 newcomers of the virtual gaming world. This strength was also the reason why the various super guilds paid no particular attention to the super newcomers of each year. Meanwhile, as long as Quirrell improved just a little bit more, he could enter the middle management of King's Return. At that time he would become a celebrity-level character, enjoying endless fame and glory. Team leader Quirrell, something happened. Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger are dead. Chapter 842 Feng arrives. They died. When Quirrell heard the report, he quickly called out the system team window. Sure enough, among the list of team members, both the names of Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger had turned gray, which meant that the 2 of them were no longer alive at this time. When the other members of the team heard this, they promptly checked their team windows as well. They simply could not bring themselves to believe what they were seeing was true. Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger were both top-tier experts in their guild. Their strength was equal to Quirrell's. If the 2 of them worked together, even a team of ordinary experts would be helpless against them. It was truly hard to imagine that these 2 experts had died. "Leader, should we head back and take a look?" an assassin asked. "We can't just let someone kill the members of King's Return and do nothing about it. If we don't deal with this matter properly, the other super guilds will surely make fun of us." "No. Just traveling back to the entrance will take us more than half an hour. By that time the enemy would have long since disappeared, Coral said, shaking his head. Moreover, we don't have a clear understanding of the situation over there. First, find those two women. We'll talk about what to do next after we've gotten rid of those two. If the enemy is capable of killing both Stranger and Tiger, we cannot underestimate their strength. It is highly likely that the enemy is a powerful team that came here to grind. It won't be too late for us to deal with them after we complete our mission. In Coral's opinion, even a great lord-ranked monster would not be able to kill ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger. No doubt the two of them had died at the hands of other players. Moreover, the enemy had to have very large numbers. They should also have many top-tier experts among them. Otherwise, with the two's strength, at least one of them should have survived. As the number of opponents was high, resolving this matter would definitely be time-consuming. Their primary mission was to kill Zero Wing's core members. They would risk letting their targets get away if they chose to deal with this new enemy first. The losses greatly outweighed the gains. Now that they were close to completing this mission, they naturally could not give up halfway. Following which, Coral and the other members of the Falcon Legion continued to move deeper into the lair of the Crystal Wolves, defeating one pack of Crystal Wolves after another. Leader, I found the two women's footprints up ahead. Judging from the tracks, they should have moved through here only recently, an assassin who had detection activated, said as he looked at the light blue footprints on the ground. These light blue footprints showed that players had passed through this place before. However, these footprints were visible only to players using the detection skill. One could make rough judgments based on the size and brightness of these footprints. The brighter the footprint, the more recently it was left behind. Good. We can finally put an end to this game of hide-and-seek. Coral revealed a cold smile as he looked at his map. As Coral said so, the members of the Falcon Legion began slowly walking in the direction indicated by the assassin. Rain, what should we do now? Blue Bamboo, who was hiding in a crack in a rock wall, asked nervously as she looked at the slowly approaching Falcon Legion, her hands tightly clenched around her staff. They were currently level 39. If they died now, it would take several days of hard work to make up for the loss. There's nowhere else to hide. When the time comes, we can only make a last stand. Thoughtful Rain was also out of ideas. Previously, they had used up their instantaneous movement scrolls to escape from the sudden ambush. Afterwards, to shake off the pursuit of their ambushers, they had no choice but to hide inside the crystal maze. Now, however, it seemed that all their efforts were still in vain. As the 18 members of the Falcon Legion moved increasingly closer, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo began casting their respective spells, resolved to fight to their very last breaths. Roar! When the Falcon Legion was roughly 100 yards away from Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, a roar suddenly resounded throughout the cave. The members of the Falcon Legion halted their steps as they turned to look for the origin of this roar one after another. They immediately discovered a tiger the size of a house slowly approaching them, step by step, the paws of this tiger covered in pitch-black flames. Surprisingly, there was actually a person sitting on top of this giant tiger. However, as this person wore a black cloak, the members of the Falcon Legion could not discern this person's appearance or identity. They could only tell that this person was a man. A player? A hint of fear woke in Coral's heart as he looked at this cloaked man riding the giant tiger. He had already used an identification skill, which confirmed that the man on the tiger was indeed a player. Then, this situation could only mean one thing. The mysterious player before them was at least level 40. As for the giant tiger, needless to say, it was this player's mount. Moreover, its quality should be very high. Currently, in God's domain, the top 10 players on the ranking list of empires were only level 39. Coral had yet to hear of anyone reaching level 40. Since this mysterious player had managed to attain such a level, needless to say, his strength was extremely extraordinary. Leader, that person is coming over. What should we do? A level 37 ranger asked somewhat anxiously. The ranger could feel significant pressure coming from the demonic flame tiger before them. However, the player capable of possessing such a mount was definitely even more powerful. For a time, the members of the Falcon Legion were at a loss as to what to do. Let's find out what his goal is for now. Coral did not hurry in making a decision. Although they had the advantage in numbers, the fact that the other party dared to walk over all by himself showed that he had no fear of them whatsoever. Otherwise, he would have long since turned around and left. When dealing with such an expert, making rash decisions was not wise. Isn't that big brother Yifeng's mount? The giant tiger gave Blue Bamboo a great sense of familiarity. However, she was also somewhat uncertain. After all, the likelihood of them encountering Feng at this place was abysmally low. That's right. That is indeed the demonic flame tiger. Thoughtful Rain's eyes flickered with joy. She had never thought that they would be able to meet Feng here. However, after a brief moment of joy, her heart filled with anxiety. After all, she could tell that the Falcon Legion was specifically targeting the core members of Zero Wing. Meanwhile, Feng was someone important in Zero Wing's upper echelon. He was sure to be one of the Falcon Legion's targets. If they found out Feng's identity, they would immediately jump him for sure. Every member of the Falcon Legion was an expert. Many in the Legion were capable of defeating Gunfire and Deathwind in a one-on-one. Among them, the leading assassin Coral was incomparably powerful, trouncing even the experienced Deathwind in just a few moves. Feng would definitely end up in an extremely dangerous situation if these 18 experts surrounded him. Just as Thoughtful Rain was thinking of a way to warn Feng. Seated atop the demonic flame tiger, Feng looked down at Coral, who stood at the head of the team, and asked, "So you're the ones looking for trouble with Zero Wing?" When Coral heard Feng's question, his expression suddenly changed. He immediately understood Feng's objective. Moreover, he was very certain that ordinary strangers and Thunder Tiger's deaths had something to do with Feng. Kill him. Coral abruptly retreated and activated stealth. Hearing his command, the members of the Falcon Legion sprang into action. The three shield warriors of the team abruptly shifted to the forefront, the healers retreated, the assassins entered stealth, and the magical classes began chanting their spells. Everyone reacted with practiced motions. What is Big Brother Yi Feng trying to do? Blue Bamboo could not help but gape when she witnessed this scene. Let's give him a hand. I'll help open a path for him. Blue, you heal him, Thoughtful Rain said hurriedly. However, as the two of them rose from their hiding place, a gigantic crimson magic array appeared on the ground where the Falcon Legion stood. This skill was none other than the Aura of Fire's skill, Firestorm. Suddenly, flames devoured the Falcon Legion. Despite the three shield warriors of the team reacting very quickly and activating shield wall the instant the flames appeared, when bathed in the violent flames, the three of them still lost over half of their HPs in the blink of an eye. Naturally, the other classes fared much worse. By the time the flames dissipated completely, the entire area had turned into a scorching hell. Just like that, 13 out of the 18 players died. All at once, the situation of the Falcon Legion took an abrupt turn. Chapter 843, Showing Off One's Trivial Skills Before a Master. At the sight of his companions reduced to ashes, Coral's mouth twitched slightly. This large-scale destruction spell came all too suddenly. Evidently, Feng had long since been prepared to cast the spell while he was approaching them. He had only voiced that question earlier to tempt them into attacking him and draw them into his trap. They did not have any time to evade this surprise attack at all. If not for Coral being near the edge of the spell's coverage, he would not have been able to utilize the brief invulnerability wind steps provided to rush out of the flames in time. At this moment, he would have most likely suffered the same fate as his 13 other companions. "Leader, what should we do?" a level 37 elementalist asked softly. "We'll retreat," Coral replied, gnashing his teeth. Although he didn't want to back off, since the man before them was capable of defeating Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger, just the 5 of them would not be able to do anything to him at all. Previously, they had 18 players on their side, enough hands to activate a magic array to suppress their opponent. Now, however, that plan was no longer viable. If they remained to fight, the only outcome would be a complete team wipe. "Don't think you can escape that easily." Feng smirked slightly as he looked at Coral and the others gradually moving away from himself. With quick steps, he approached the closest level 37 elementalist. Previously, in order to survive his firestorm, these players had already used up all their life-saving skills. It would be near impossible for them to escape him now. Don't hold back when going up against him. I'll pin him down. Ranged classes support me. When Coral saw Feng approaching them like a gale, he hurriedly activated his Berserk skill, and his attributes increased by a large margin. He then used shadow steps to appear directly behind Feng and stabbed his Feng-like dagger at Feng's heart. Absolute Strike. This was the fastest and most powerful skill of the assassin class. In addition to Coral's flawless movements, there was practically no time lag between the activation of Shadow Steps and Absolute Strike. It was simply impossible for ordinary players to guard against his attack. Moreover, after Coral activated his Berserk skill, the power and speed of his attack were both boosted to inhuman levels. The Elementalist at a distance also shot one fireball after another at the location Feng dodged to, his coordination with Coral seamless. The ranger standing on the other side likewise sent a barrage of frost arrows at Feng, his attacks accurately targeting the swordsman's vital points. Looking at the coordination of the three players, even thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who rarely fought other players, could tell that their enemies were very powerful. Immediately, panic appeared on their faces. All at once, however, Feng disappeared. Coral's and the others' attacks all struck air. Where is he? Coral hurriedly observed his surroundings. Suddenly, his eyes widened as he rushed at the distant Elementalist, shouting, "Dodge quickly!" At this moment, Feng had already appeared behind the Elementalist using silent steps. He then violently swung the sacred sword in his hand. A streak of blue light flashed. Dang! Although the blue light was fast, when it landed on the Elementalist's body, it moved no further, as if it had struck an impenetrable wall. Ice barrier? Feng was slightly surprised when he looked at the Elementalist, who was currently covered in a layer of ice. The Elementalist looked just like an ice sculpture right now. Ice barrier was the strongest life-saving skill of the Elementalist class, providing the user with invulnerability for 8 seconds. However, after activating the skill, the user would not be able to do anything else. This skill was extremely rare. Generally, finding 1 or 2 people who had learned the skill, out of 100 expert elementalists, was unlikely. Helpless against this skill, Feng could only shift his sights to someone else. However, just as he started searching for a new target, a blue magic array appeared above his head. In the next moment, the rumble of thunder echoed in the cave. Coral, who stood at a distance, also revealed a cold sneer on his face. This magic array was the result of him using a Tier 2 magic scroll, Thunder Hell. Not only would the spell deal a frightening amount of damage to a certain area, but it could also prevent players within the affected area from wielding any of their skills. It was a magic scroll that was meant to counter experts in particular. Die! Coral shouted as he guided arcs of lightning to descend from the sky. Boom! 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 Arc after arc of lightning descended from overhead, turning a radius of 20 yards into a world of thunder and lightning. Any player caught within the region of Thunder Hell would not survive. Only the Elementalist, who had activated Ice Barrier beforehand, would remain unharmed by the spell. Ah! Team leader is still the best. The ranger laughed proudly as he looked at the flurry of lightning bolts crashing before him. Players were fated to remain as only players. Even if they had extremely high attributes and combat standards, actual field battles did not rely on just these two things. External tools still had great influence on the outcome of a battle. Even if Feng possessed attributes rivaling those of a chieftain of the same level, if he could not use any of his skills, he would definitely succumb to the destructive power of a Tier 2 spell with the pitiful amount of HP he possessed. Seeing the lightning storm devouring Feng, Coral breathed out a sigh of relief as well. Although Feng's silent steps had surprised him somewhat, the latter must not have expected him to possess a magic scroll that was meant to counter expert players. Only this magic scroll had a relatively long activation time. However, the Elementalist just happened to earn him quite a lot of time. Alright, you guys are next. Coral then shifted his gaze towards the distant thoughtful Rain. Ah! At this moment, the previously celebrating ranger suddenly screamed as numerous streaks of blue light bloomed on his body. The ranger's body then collapsed to the ground, a piece of equipment dropping off his body. How did you manage to escape? Coral's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets at the sight of Feng standing behind the dead ranger. Moreover, the swordsman was entirely unharmed. Do you think you're the only one who has a magic scroll? Feng smirked as he picked up the dropped equipment. The appearance of Thunder Hell had indeed shocked him. Fortunately, he always carried around plenty of magic scrolls when he went out, especially the life-saving instantaneous movement scroll. Although the magic scroll had a cooldown of 10 minutes, the scroll boasted instantaneous activation. It was an item specifically meant to counter control skills. Just who are you? Why are you targeting us? Coral asked, his complexion deathly pale. However, while Coral was posing his question, he was also making subtle gestures, signaling the 2 other assassins in stealth to circle around and ambush Feng. The 2 stealthed assassins nodded silently. They then began approaching Feng with light steps. Both of them were experts capable of melding their actions with their environment. Even a top-tier expert would find it difficult to discover them while they were in stealth. Trying to divert my attention? Feng laughed as he shook his head. He then turned around without any warning and used Thundering Flash. Several arcs of lightning streaked across space. Immediately, two figures emerged in the path the lightning arcs traversed. They were none other than the two stealthed assassins whom Quirrell had signaled to before. At this moment, both their bodies fell to the ground abruptly, both their HPs having already hit rock bottom. Feng had activated Omniscient Eyes as soon as the battle began. Hence, he could see the two stealthed assassins approaching him as clear as day. He had only pretended not to notice them. However, now that they were taking the initiative to present their lives to him, how could he possibly refuse their offer? Quirrell's complexion darkened significantly when he saw this scene. "All right, now you're the only one left," Feng said in a low tone. "Only me?" Quirrell was inwardly confused. There was clearly an elementalist still present. Why would Feng say that he was the only one left? In the next moment, a crimson dart appeared in Feng's hand. He then threw the dart at the elementalist stuck inside the ice. Flame God's Fury. The instant the duration of Ice Barrier ended, before the elementalist could even react, Blazing Meteor had already appeared before him. Feng's grasp on time had reached perfection. Right after, flames devoured the elementalist completely, reducing his body to a pile of smoldering ash. "Just who are you?" Quirrell asked, fear painted across his face. After he had set up so many traps, even the apex experts in his guild would have succumbed to death by now. Yet, as if he had been playing in Feng's palm all this time, none of his traps had worked on Feng. Just thinking up to this point made his heart shudder in fear, a sense of powerlessness spreading throughout his entire being. "Do you have any last words?" Feng asked softly, not bothering to answer Quirrell's question. Instead, he slowly walked towards the assassin step by step. For each step Feng took, Quirrell unconsciously retreated by a step as well. Despite his berserk skill being active right now, Quirrell was not the slightest bit confident he could win against Feng. Meanwhile, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who were watching this scene, were both stupefied. "I am part of King's Return's Falcon Legion. Are you trying to make an enemy out of King's Return?" Quirrell demanded, gnashing his teeth. He did not wish to die. The guild's class competition was rapidly approaching. If he died now, the loss in level, equipment, and skill proficiency would have a significant effect on his performance in the competition. Now, his only choice was to reveal his identity. Previously, the reason they had concealed their identities was to avoid letting Zero Wing take preventive measures against them. With their identities unknown, their subsequent operations would flow much more smoothly. Now that everyone except for himself had died, there was naturally no need to continue hiding this fact. Moreover, the stronger an expert was, the more knowledgeable they were about how powerful super guilds were. If the opponent still dared to make a move even after he revealed this fact, this person would definitely be a fool. Chapter 844, Field of Swords. "What? Don't believe me?" Upon seeing Feng showing no signs of stopping, Quirrell hurriedly took off his black cloak and displayed his King's Return Guild emblem. This sight momentarily stunned Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. "Why is someone from a super guild targeting us?" Thoughtful Rain was confused as she looked at the King's Return's emblem. She no longer possessed her previous joy at seeing Feng defeating the Falcon Legion. On the contrary, she felt somewhat worried instead. Although she had come into contact with virtual reality games only recently, she still knew just how powerful an existence a super guild was. In current society, virtual reality games had over a century of history already. The super guilds of virtual reality games were just like major celebrities. In the real world, one often saw news coverage of these existences. Hence, it was difficult for one not to know about them. Among them, King's Return operated slightly differently from other super guilds. The guild would occasionally recruit expert players. Regarding popularity, King's Return greatly surpassed the other super guilds. One could frequently hear news of certain powerful experts joining King's Return. Hence, Thoughtful Rain had a certain degree of understanding of the guild, and she knew just how wide the gap between Zero Wing and King's Return was. Whether it was in terms of member count or number of experts, the two guilds were on entirely different levels. If a war were to break out between their two guilds, it would be a disaster for Zero Wing. "No wonder you guys dared to take action against Zero Wing's members in Starmoon Kingdom. So you're a member of King's Return." Feng finally understood what was going on. Because he had rejected King's Return's previous offer, the guild was now targeting Zero Wing's core members. However, he immediately smiled at Quirrell and asked, "But don't you know who I am?" Saying so, Feng stored away his black cloak and revealed his original appearance. Yi Feng? Quirrell's mouth slackened when he saw Feng's appearance. He simply could not bring himself to believe this was true. Yi Feng was not as famous as Zero Wing's Black Flame and was in existence known only among the major powers of God's domain. But when speaking of strength, Yi Feng was someone who had defeated Sirius, one of the Wolf Kings of the Battle Wolves Guild. After the fight at the Dark Arena, King's Return had even created a database specifically for information on Yi Feng. Quirrell himself had watched the battle video between Yi Feng and Sirius, learning from it. Hence, Quirrell recognized Yi Feng right off the bat. However, although he had indeed recognized who his opponent was, his complexion turned even uglier than before. Damn it! Why is my luck so horrible? To think I would actually encounter him here. At this moment, Quirrell was regretting the fact that he had revealed his own identity. If he had not exposed himself, he might still have a chance of surviving. Now, however, nothing he said would get him out of this situation alive. Although he still had his vanish skill, even if he was stupider, he could tell that invisibility skills were useless against Feng. Otherwise, Feng would not have struck at the stealthed assassins behind him without even the slightest bit of hesitation. If even stealth was ineffective, then wanting to escape in front of such an expert was nothing more than a pipe dream. King's Return had done detailed research on that battle at the Dark Arena and made a rough estimation of the attributes of the two fighters already. In terms of basic attributes, he was considerably inferior to Yi Feng. Not to mention, speed was also one of Yi Feng's strong points. Quirrell's face darkened at the sight of Feng rushing over. Damn it! To think that I would have to use that opportunity now. I definitely won't forgive you, Yi Feng. I will definitely massacre every core member of Zero Wing. Quirrell bellowed. He then took out a purple crystal ball from his bag while continuously spewing venomous curses. Just you wait. I, Quirrell, will definitely make you regret this day. In reality, the real reason he did not wish to die was the crystal ball in his hand. This item was something he had obtained unexpectedly after completing one part of a chain quest. It was a one-time use item. Moreover, it could only be stored in his bag and would drop upon death. This item could directly transfer its user to a special space. Based on his research, that special space should be a sacred training ground capable of allowing players to improve their combat techniques and standards. Its effects should be even better than those of a secret technique tablet his guild possessed. This item was something he had kept to himself. Originally, he had intended to wait until he had grown stronger and had hit a bottleneck before going to that special space, because based on the information he obtained, that space was extremely dangerous. If he went there too soon, he would only be wasting this opportunity. Hence, he had always done things with great care, avoiding dangerous situations as much as possible. He had never expected that he would actually be forced to enter that special space due to the mission this time. This crystal ball was his greatest opportunity to join the guild's upper echelon. Now, however, Feng ruined all of his plans. How could Quirrell not be angry? Suddenly, an endless amount of mana rapidly flowed into his body. A crack then appeared in the space behind him. Like a black hole, the spatial crack sucked the assassin towards it. You think you can get away? Feng smiled with disdain. He switched the aura of fire to the aura of time and then activated absolute time. Suddenly, the mana within a radius of 100 yards stilled. The mana surrounding Quirrell's body also dissipated abruptly, following which the crack in space started mending itself. No! Quirrell was momentarily dumbfounded. In the next moment, his eyes turned bloodshot as he abruptly executed unique footwork and transformed into 3 identical copies of himself. These 3 copies then charged at Feng maniacally. The 3 indistinguishable copies of Quirrell continuously circled Feng. Die! All 3 Quirrells bellowed as they held their daggers in a reverse grip and stabbed them at Feng. Like a black whirlwind, the pitch-black daggers struck at Feng from all directions. Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who were watching this scene from afar, were stupefied. They understood clearly that the phenomenon of the black whirlwinds they were seeing right now was not a result of a system-generated skill. Instead, it was the result of a combat technique used by the player himself. This was the first time they had seen such a situation. They were utterly clueless as to how the assassin had achieved such a feat. Compared to Coral, the experts they had encountered before were simply weaklings. It was no wonder death, wind and gunfire fell at Coral's hands in just a few moves. He was practically a monster in human skin. So he's finally using his specialty Whirlwind Strike. This sudden development did not surprise Feng. After all, Coral was no stranger to him. In the past, Coral had been titled the Whirlwind Assassin. Although he had not been particularly famous during the early stages of God's domain, upon his promotion to King's Return's middle management, he began improving rapidly. In the end, he had even managed to become an adjudicator of King's Return. His strength back then had been extremely overbearing. Not daring to be careless, Feng chose to activate Thunder God's Descent, which increased his movement speed and attack speed by 150% and damage dealt by 50%, as well as decreased all damage received by 50%. Facing the storm-like dagger attacks, Feng madly brandished his two swords. Immediately, sparks scattered as the clangor of metal clashing against metal echoed throughout the surroundings multiple times. Feng had already reached the Void Realm. He had long since exerted his five senses to their limits. He read his surroundings like an open book. Even if it was an attack that was invisible to the naked eye, Feng could still clearly perceive it and execute a timely response. In the next moment, numerous streaks of blue and silver lights bloomed around Feng's body, forming an inviolable field. As long as the black daggers entered this field, they would immediately get repelled. Since Coral had his berserk skill activated, the assassin was superior to Feng in strength. Hence, Feng would lose around 200 HP following each clash of their weapons. Fortunately, with Thunder God's Descent, Feng still had a clear speed advantage, so none of Coral's attacks managed to penetrate his defense. Aside from blocking all of Coral's attacks, Feng would also occasionally strike back at the assassin, reaping a large chunk of the latter's HP. In reality, Feng could have ended the battle instantly. However, he wanted to improve his own techniques by fighting the assassin. Hence, he had not bothered using any of his berserk skills to increase his attributes. How can this be? Why can't I hit him? The more Coral fought, the more fearful he became. Despite having already activated his berserk skill, his basic attributes surpassing Feng, he could not break through Feng's defense no matter what. On the other hand, Feng managed to strike at his vital points time after time, whittling his HP chunk after chunk until it finally zeroed out. As Coral fell reluctantly to the ground, he also dropped several items. Chapter 845, 5 Great Legacies. When Coral died, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who had watched quietly from afar, were astonished. When they looked at Feng again, shock filled their eyes. They felt as if the man before them was a stranger. This was the first time they ever truly understood Feng's strength. Those two were simply too strong. Words alone were no longer sufficient to describe this level of strength. This was the first time they had ever witnessed such an intense battle. Their eyes had not been fast enough to keep up with the combatants' speed, let alone their bodies. If they had fought Coral, the battle would have ended as soon as it had begun. In the end, however, Feng was still superior. Big brother Feng is so strong. If I had even half of his skill, I could defeat Autumn Goose. Excitement filled Blue Bamboo's eyes as she stared at Feng. Thoughtful Rain could not help herself from laughing when she heard her friend's words. When they were usually out in the fields adventuring and questing, Blue Bamboo was always lazy. She was never particularly interested in fighting and would generally stay in the back to heal the members of their party. Although they had advised her many times to brush up on her combat techniques, she never bothered to do so. Instead, she usually replied by saying that it would be fine so long as she had good equipment and that she didn't need good combat techniques. Thoughtful Rain had never thought that the girl would be mesmerized by this one battle's combat techniques. Alright, enough daydreaming. Let's head over there. It's too dangerous to stay here, Thoughtful Rain said, laughing. Feng began to collect his loot. Naturally, an elite squadron from King's Return, led by an expert like Coral, possessed excellent equipment. Every piece of equipment they dropped was level 35 dark gold quality. Each item was worth dozens of gold. In total, he had gained several hundred golds worth of equipment. Huh, what's this? While Feng looked over the loot he had placed in his bag, he discovered a glowing, purple crystal ball. Among the many weapons and equipment that dropped, it was eye-catching. Moreover, Feng felt a faint hint of pressure from this crystal ball, a very familiar pressure. Divine Might. It was a special power that only gods could wield. This is interesting. Feng took out the crystal ball and observed it carefully. Spatial transfer orb consumable. Able to send one player to a mysterious otherworld. This item can only be stored in the bag. Drops upon death. There were very few items in God's domain capable of sending players to an otherworld. Based on Feng's understanding, every item that could transfer players to an otherworld was considered an absolute treasure. Even an epic item was not as valuable. In God's domain, an otherworld was the equivalent of a dungeon. Only, this dungeon was a lot larger than generic dungeons. Otherworlds also offered far more bountiful rewards. The lowest reward one could obtain in an otherworld was an epic item. Some people had even obtained fragmented legendary items in the past, while others earned super skills and such. To put it simply, all of the rewards one could gain in an otherworld could significantly improve a player's strength. It's no wonder why he had tried so hard to live. He obtained a chance to head to another world. I wonder what rank this otherworld is? When Feng recalled the Quarrel's deranged expression as the assassin fought, he could not help but chuckle. He would have fought desperately to live too. Quarrel hadn't been particularly famous in King's Return during the early stages of the game either. However, after joining the guild's middle management, his progress had suddenly skyrocketed. It was as if he had become an entirely different person. His progress might very well be related to this thing. There were many other worlds in God's domain. Based on the main god system's categorization, otherworlds fell into common, epic and legendary rank, with each one being larger than the previous. Each rank also offered players greater benefits. A common otherworld alone could massively impact a player's growth. By visiting a common otherworld, an ordinary player could instantly become an expert. There was no need to mention epic or legendary otherworlds. However, the majority of the otherworlds in God's domain were common rank. Even so, many desperately wished to encounter one, but alas, many failed. In the past, when players had discovered otherworlds, the various large guilds had frantically searched for clues relating to them in the hopes of nurturing a large batch of their own experts. After all, there were innumerable guilds in the virtual gaming world. Not every one of them could nurture their own experts. With such a golden opportunity available, the various large guilds could not let it slip through their fingers. In the past, a top-tier expert had sold an opportunity to go to an otherworld at an auction. Although the otherworld in question had only been common rank, the various large guilds fought over it like a pack of wolves. In the end, Summer's Emerald, a first-rate guild, had won the transfer tool for 15,000 gold. Everyone who had participated in that auction had been stunned. After all, during that time, a single epic item had only sold for around 2,000 or 3,000 gold. With that much money, one could easily purchase 5 or 6 epic items. One could also use 15,000 gold to purchase a good plot of land. Yet, Summer's Emerald had used that money to purchase a common otherworld, which was the equivalent of a single epic item. Wasting so much money was the epitome of foolishness. Yet, nobody could have ever imagined that, in the end, Summer's Emerald would profit from the exchange. The guild had only obtained a single epic weapon, which was worth roughly 6,000 gold from the common otherworld. That had been far less than the money it had spent. However, thanks to the adventures in the otherworld, Summer's Emerald had also gained a Void Realm expert. The outcome had made many guilds regret not fighting harder during the auction. From then on, transfer tools to otherworlds became extraordinarily precious. Even Feng, who had been the guild leader of a second-rate guild, had invested a long amount of time before he had gotten his hands on a common otherworld transfer tool. Although he had not experienced breakthrough during his visit, his combat techniques had improved significantly. What a strange transfer tool. It doesn't have a rank displayed. Even after observing with omniscient eyes, Feng had not discerned the purple crystal ball's rank. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. However, although there was no rank displayed, the crystal ball reminded Feng of something. Otherworld transfer tools. This was a good option to cultivate guild experts. The general populace had yet to learn of otherworlds. They were also not well known by the various large guilds. Hence, none of the guilds were bothering to look for clues regarding otherworlds. Although Feng only knew 5 or 6 clues, no one else had obtained any of these otherworld transfer tools. He could head out to search for them. Once he obtained these otherworld transfer tools, he might be able to increase the number of Zero Wings Refinement Realm experts. As Blue Bamboo walked over, her eyes practically shone as she looked at Feng. Patting her ample chest, she said, Big brother Yi Feng, it is truly a blessing to meet you here. If not for you, Rain and I would have suffered. From today on, I've decided to work hard to improve myself. Big brother Yi Feng, can you teach me how to fight, please? I only hurried over here after hearing from Autumn Goose that you were ambushed. Fortunately, I made it in time. It is a good thing that you wish to learn how to fight. Unfortunately, as I am not a cleric, I am not particularly clear as to how clerics should fight. However, I can have Violet teach you. Her combat standard ranks at the very top of our guild. Feng chuckled. Really? Blue Bamboo's eyes flashed with excitement when she heard this. She had only made the comment as a joke. She knew full well just how busy Feng was. How could he possibly have time to teach her? However, she had not expected to get a chance to learn from her idol. She felt as if she were dreaming. Of course. When have I ever lied? Feng nodded. By the way, why did you two come to the Crystal Forest? Didn't you already finish your quest? We thought we had finished it. However, after I handed the quest in, I received another special quest that requires me to collect a crystal heart. However, we have yet to obtain it, Thoughtful Rain explained. Crystal heart? What kind of quest is this? Feng was slightly surprised. He knew how to obtain the crystal heart. One had to kill the Crystal Wolf King. The quest was not easy to complete alone. Thoughtful Rain then sent Feng the quest details. How did you receive this quest? Feng could not help his shock upon reading the quest introduction. The quest Thoughtful Rain had accepted was no ordinary quest. Rather, it was one of Starmoon Kingdom's 5 great legacy quests. The Witch's Sin. Chapter 846, Witch's Sin. When Feng read the quest introduction, he wondered if he had read it wrong. However, after reading it a few more times, he was 100% certain that this quest was one of Starmoon Kingdom's 5 great legacy quests. Is this quest very difficult? Thoughtful Rain asked when she saw Feng's shocked expression. I can't say for certain, but it should be more difficult than an epic quest, Feng explained. Just for the first phase of your quest, you have to kill the Crystal Wolf King to obtain the Crystal Heart. There were many legacies in God's domain. However, in Starmoon Kingdom there were 5 legacies known to be the strongest. The Witch's Sin was one of them. These 5 great legacies were all peak legacies. Unfortunately, there was no concrete method to triggering any of these 5 great legacies quests. It was highly possible for one to trigger the quest after completing an ordinary quest. Those who encountered these 5 great legacy quests were extremely lucky. They were the system's pampered children. After all, peak legacies were extraordinary. As long as one succeeded in their class change, they would improve their strength tremendously. Until now, throughout Zero Wing, only Feng and Violet Cloud had managed to obtain a hidden class. One could just imagine how rare hidden classes were. However, stumbling upon one of Starmoon Kingdom's 5 great legacies and completing one were completely different matters. Most importantly, there would be frightening consequences if one failed the quest after accepting it. Those who failed a basic legacy quest would, at worst, be barred from logging into the game for a certain amount of time. They could continue challenging the quest once they were able to log back into the game. As for legacies that provided hidden classes, players only had one chance. Failing these legacy quests usually resulted in a single death. However, the punishment for failing the 5 great legacy quests was extremely severe. Not only would one lose 3 levels, but they would also enter a weakened state for 10 days. However, this was only the tip of the iceberg. The worst part about failing one of the 5 great legacy quests was that one would permanently lose some of their luck attribute. The luck attribute was a hidden attribute. Normally, it was difficult to increase the attribute by 1 or 2 points. If a player permanently lost some of their luck as a result of failing the legacy quest, it would massively impact their performance in various aspects such as their drop rate when opening treasure chests and grinding monsters. Due to this, the 5 great legacies of Starmoon Kingdom had been extremely famous in the past. There was only a thin line separating heaven and hell. On the surface they were known as the 5 great legacies. Secretly, however, players knew them as the 5 great curses. In the past, many players had obtained the 5 great legacy quests of Starmoon Kingdom. However, based on Feng's knowledge, Gentle Snow was the only one who had completed one of the quests. He had never heard of anyone else. One could just imagine how difficult the quests were. Correspondingly, however, when Gentle Snow had obtained one of the 5 great legacies, she had risen to fame in God's domain instantly. In field and guild battles she had killed plenty of top-tier experts and had even killed apex experts. Unfortunately, she had suddenly disappeared from the game, and the incident became one of God's domain's unresolved mysteries. If Gentle Snow had not left God's domain, many people speculated that she would have become a Tier 6 God-ranked expert in Starmoon Kingdom. Many players could not help but sigh at how unfortunate the situation was. Hence, when Feng saw that Thoughtful Rain had accepted the legacy quest for the Witch's Sin, he was both excited and worried. More difficult than an epic quest? Thoughtful Rain's eyes widened when she heard this, and inwardly she smiled bitterly. Up until now she had completed many quests in God's domain, so she understood one thing very well. The more difficult a quest was, the more difficult its punishment for failure would be. There was nothing good in accepting a quest that was beyond her abilities. A player would suffer if they failed an epic quest. If she failed a quest that was even more difficult than an epic quest, she did not dare to imagine the consequences awaiting her. There is no need to get too hung up about it. The quest has a time limit of 3 months. You still have 3 months to grow stronger and complete this quest. During this period, how do you feel about training with the guild's main force? Feng asked. Even Feng didn't know the finer details of the 5 great legacy quests. However, since it was a legacy quest, Feng was sure of one thing. Players had to rely on their own strength to pass the quest's final phase. If one were strong enough, it would not be too difficult to complete the legacy quest. Based on what Feng remembered, Gentle Snow had completed her legacy quest when she had reached the Flowing Water Realm. As long as Thoughtful Rain could also reach the Flowing Water Realm, she should have no problems completing the final test. At that time, Zero Wing would have another player with a hidden class. I can join in the training? Thoughtful Rain could not help her surprise when she heard Feng's offer. The treatment Zero Wing's main force enjoyed was far from ordinary. The magic crystals they received each day alone even made experts like Autumn Goose drool. One could use magic crystals to challenge the trial tower inside the Divine Colosseum and improve their combat standards. The magic crystal was an absolute hard currency. However, its supply was low, and it was difficult to obtain even if one had the money. Large guilds would generally supply their main force members with around 3 to 5 magic crystals each day. However, Zero Wing gave its main force members 15 crystals per day. In other words, Zero Wing's main force members could challenge the trial tower up to 15 times each day. Even the members of large guilds could not catch up to their development speed. Moreover, based on what she had heard, Zero Wing's main force members also got to watch all sorts of battle videos. These battle videos included expert battles that were not available on the internet. In addition, they could also spar against top-tier experts like Fire Dance. However, the most amazing part about being a member of Zero Wing's main force was the rumored 100-berry wine. Although she did not know the purpose of the 100-berry wine, she knew that even the main force members fought over this item like crazy. Some were even willing to trade a large amount of guild contribution points and magic crystals for it. However, those who obtained the 100-berry wine would never trade them. Instead, they consumed the beverage secretly. One could just imagine how valuable the item was. Big brother Feng, can I train with the main force as well? Blue Bamboo asked sweetly as she batted her eyelashes. Sure, but let me say this first. You two are only reserve members. If you fail the exam 3 times, you'll be kicked out of the team, Feng strictly informed the women. Thank you, big brother Feng. When Autumn and the others hear about this, they will die from envy. Blue Bamboo could not help but giggle when she thought about the benefits the main force members enjoyed. Right, how long will it take before you two are released from your locked state? Feng asked. Roughly 2 hours, Thoughtful Rain replied after she took a look at her status window. Although their enemies were already dead, the soul lock debuff was in effect. They were still stuck in a combat state and could not use a return scroll to leave. Blue, have you learned the Dispel skill? Feng asked Blue Bamboo. Cleric's Dispel skill was not mainstream. Moreover, the skill was relatively rare. Very few clerics had it. However, this skill had a miraculous effect when raiding certain bosses. Dispel could remove a positive buff from an enemy. To bosses who loved buffing themselves, this was the equivalent of yanking out their fangs and claws. The Crystal Wolf King was one such boss. I bought one from the auction house and learned it already, Blue Bamboo said and nodded strangely. Good. Has it reached tier 1 yet? Feng had dealt with the Crystal Wolf King many times before. If one used a Tier 0 dispel, at most they could remove a few Tier 2 buffs. Only a Tier 1 dispel could remove buffs from Tier 3 skills. Not yet. I don't use this skill very often, Blue Bamboo answered awkwardly. Take these magic scrolls. When the time comes, use them before you use Dispel, Feng said. He then took out 5 golden Tier 1 magic scrolls from his bag and handed them to Blue Bamboo. These 5 magic scrolls were spell amplification scrolls. Each one could upgrade a spell up to Tier 1. Big brother Feng, what am I supposed to do with these? Blue Bamboo was even more confused now. We're getting ready to kill the Crystal Wolf King, of course, Feng responded casually. Kill the Crystal Wolf King? Blue Bamboo was stunned. Thoughtful Rain was also at a loss for words. They had already seen the Crystal Wolf King. It was a level 50 Great Lord. With just the 3 of them, challenging it would be tantamount to suicide. However, ignoring the 2 women's shock, Feng retrieved 2 contracts from his bag and began to chant an incantation. Emerge. Immediately, 2 teleportation magic arrays appeared on the ground. Following a flash of silver light, 2 figures, a man and a woman, emerged from the 2 magic arrays. These 2 were none other than Kite and Anna, Feng's personal guards. Chapter 847, Strength that Surpasses Tears. NPCs? Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo were surprised when Kite and Anna suddenly appeared. Both Kite and Anna radiated an intense aura. They felt suffocated as they stood so close to these 2 NPCs. After not seeing them for some time, they sure have grown a lot. Feng was quite satisfied when he looked at the handsome Kite and charming Anna. Both are level 60 now. As expected of Dark Gold guards. Their growth rate sure is fast. It was especially true for Anna's improvement speed. Despite having become his personal guard a little later than Kite, she had caught up to her companion's level. Moreover, she had become a Tier 2 summoner. In God's domain, it was not that easy to nurture a powerful personal guard. First and foremost, one required a large sum of money. As personal guards were NPCs, they required far more EXP to level up than players. If players frequently brought their personal guards when they went out to grind, this would only hold back the NPC's growth rate. If players wanted to let their personal guards level up and improve quickly, they had to let these personal guards accept quests at the Adventurers Association on their own. However, money was required when personal guards accepted a quest. Moreover, depending on the rank of the quest, the fee would also change. Although these personal guards would receive money, EXP, and other rewards after completing the quest, the player would receive none of it. This was because personal guards would use the money they earned to purchase their own equipment and items. Unlike players who had to obtain powerful equipment by raiding dungeons, personal guards could purchase such items from the Adventurers Association or NPC-run weapons and equipment shops. However, personal guards could only use the money they earned themselves. Hence, the first step to nurturing personal guards was to increase the amount of money they possessed, and they had to complete a lot of quests to obtain that money. In the Adventurers Association, the quests personal guards could accept were categorized into Bronze, Mysterious Iron, Secret Silver, Fine Gold, Dark Gold, and Epic rank. The higher the rank the quest was, the more abundant the rewards were. Likewise, the fee players had to pay would be higher as well. Currently, a level 60 Bronze quest required an application fee of 5 gold, 10 gold for Mysterious Iron, 20 gold for Secret Silver, 40 gold for Fine Gold, 80 gold for Dark Gold, and 200 gold for Epic. As to whether the personal guard in question could complete the quest, that depended on the personal guard's strength. For example, a Bronze guard would have a 70% chance of completing a Bronze quest, but they would only have a 40% chance to complete a Mysterious Iron quest and 10% chance for a Secret Silver quest. However, one could increase a personal guard's combat power through their equipment, increasing their quest success rate. Unfortunately, one needed time to gather the required resources. However, Anna and Kite were different. Their innate potential was Dark Gold rank. Even in basic equipment, they had a 50% chance of completing a Dark Gold quest. As long as their equipment was up to date, their success rate for completing a Dark Gold quest could easily exceed 80%. After their strength reached a certain degree, they could even challenge an Epic quest. Only, Epic quests were not readily available. That depended on the daily updates of the Adventurers Association's quest list. As Feng's personal guards could accept much higher ranked quests than other players' personal guards, their leveling speed was much faster. Feng, are we really going to deal with the Crystal Wolf King? Thoughtful Rain asked somewhat worriedly as she watched the high-spirited Feng. Although the two level 60 tier 2 NPCs were very powerful, the Crystal Wolf King was a great lord, an existence equivalent to a tier 3 class. Relax. I've already investigated the Crystal Wolf King. The boss's skills are buff-oriented. As long as blue casts Dispel on it, our forces will be enough to take it down, Feng explained, chuckling. This was not the first time he had dealt with the Crystal Wolf King. The Wolf King was powerful because of its speed. Even a top-tier MT of the same level would find it difficult to respond to the Wolf King's attacks. In addition, the boss had a stackable gain skill that allowed it to grow stronger the longer it fought. If they did not deal with this gain buff appropriately, they would be annihilated. However, if they dealt with the boss's gain buff properly with the strength of 2 Dark Gold Guards, they should have no problems taking down the Crystal Wolf King. Following which, Feng led Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo to a cave. A strong gale accosted the small team at the cave's entrance. As they stepped into the cave, they heard the howling of a wolf. The howl echoed throughout the cave, causing the cave walls and floor to tremble. In the next moment, a towering figure emerged from the depths of the dark, spacious cave. The figure stood over 10 meters tall. Bearing its snow-white fangs, a hint of bloodlust flashed in the figure's crimson eyes as it overlooked Feng's group. The figure's body was made entirely of crystals, and a green glow flashed where its heart should have been. Crystal Wolf King, Elemental Being, Great Lord. Level 50. HP 21-000/21-000-000. Kite, you'll tank the Wolf King. Anna, you'll act as support. Blue, focus on healing Kite, Feng immediately commanded. As Feng gave his orders, the tall and robust Kite transformed into a gale as he dashed towards the Crystal Wolf King. Kite only had 750,000 HP. Compared to the Great Lord, that was practically nothing. The Crystal Wolf King swung its razor-sharp claws, sending numerous streaks of silver light flying at the Sword Master. The silver lights were so fast that no ordinary player would have time to react. However, rather than dodging, Kite unsheathed his 2 swords and brandished his weapons. The guard shattered the flying, silver lights. Kite released a low growl, and the 2 swords in his hands released a dazzling blue glow. He then swung the weapons forward violently. Tier 2 skill Wind Fang. The 2 massive blue fangs transformed into 2 streaks of light, instantly piercing the Crystal Wolf King's body. Ow! Oh! The Crystal Wolf King screamed in pain and retreated by 2 steps, 2 damages of over -100,000 points appearing its head. However, Kite was not done with his attacks. Immediately he appeared before the Great Lord. The Crystal Wolf King was furious. Bearing its fangs, it swung its massive paw at Kite so fast that one could only see black shadows move towards the Sword Master. Boom. The earth shook. However, the Wolf King's paw never made contact with Kite's body. Instead, Kite blocked the attack with one hand. Kite then countered with a slash towards the giant paw's joint. A streak of blue light struck the Wolf King's paw, causing the boss to lose over 20,000 HP. Big brother Feng, your personal guard is so strong. Blue Bamboo's eyes widened with surprise as she watched the fight. She had seen many powerful personal guards before. However, all of the Tier 2 personal guards she had seen had even struggled to deal with a lord, not to mention a great lord. They also required players' assistance. Yet, Kite could block this great lord's attack with a single hand. Feng was similarly shocked. He had never thought that Kite would be this powerful. The NPC had already grown to be capable of withstanding a Tier 3 monster's attack. He even had slightly higher strength than the Crystal Wolf King. Only now did Feng understand why those super guilds in the past had been so desperate to obtain a Dark Gold Guard. If Kite was this strong right now, how powerful would he be when he reached Tier 5? While Feng watched, astonished, Anna, who stood a short distance away from the Crystal Wolf King, also began to attack. When her chanting came to an end, suddenly, a brilliant light filled the dark cave. A massive, golden magic array had enveloped over half of the cave. Anna's aura also grew by multiple times. Even Feng, who stood far away from the summoner, had trouble breathing in the dense aura. Chapter 848, Frightening Dark Gold Guard. What is this spell? Feng could feel the aura around Anna strengthening. Right now it felt as if a Tier 3 NPC was standing before him. This was the first time Feng had seen such a spell. Tier 3 NPCs were generally tasked to defend a city. Even in a major city like White River City, they would be considered top-class individuals. Players would find it difficult to meet one. Feng immediately called out Anna's skill menu. What? She's grasped a Tier 2 curse already? Feng was extremely shocked when he saw the list displayed on the skill menu. Anna's growth potential was incredible. Previously, Feng had checked Kite's skill menu. Although the Swordmaster had learned quite a number of Tier 2 skills, he had picked up just one Tier 2 Taboo skill. Moreover, he had obtained this Taboo skill only after completing many quests. In contrast, Anna actually already possessed two Tier 2 curses right now. Moreover, one of them was even a curse Feng had never heard before. Song of Summoning. Not only would the curse forcefully upgrade the caster to Tier 3 temporarily, but it would also summon a golden giant, a Tier 3 creature. In the next moment, an endless amount of mana began gathering at the center of the golden magic array. After roughly 3 seconds, the large supply of mana condensed into a golden giant over 10 meters tall. The giant was fully equipped with golden armor, and it carried a giant golden axe on its back. Golden Giant, Elemental Being, Great Lord. Level 60. HP 30, 000, 000/30, 000, 000. Feng was ecstatic when he saw the golden giant. Anna's performance was simply terrific. Despite being only a Tier 2 NPC, she was already capable of summoning a Tier 3 creature. Moreover, Anna herself had also reached the standard of a Tier 3, albeit temporarily. With this, dealing with a Tier 3 monster of the same level would be child's play for her. In the next moment, the golden giant charged at the Crystal Wolf King and swung its golden axe. However, the speed of the giant's axe was not particularly fast. As a result, the Wolf King managed to block the weapon in time using its paw. Boom. The impact of the collision sent the Wolf King flying, and then its body slammed heavily into the ground. The paw it defended itself with trembled uncontrollably as well. At this moment, when the Wolf King looked at the golden giant, its eyes were filled with fear. Not only had the Crystal Wolf King gone flying from this frontal clash, but it had also suffered over -5,000 damage from the resulting impact. If the Wolf King had not blocked the golden giant's axe, the damage it received from the golden giant would have definitely exceeded the damage Kite had inflicted. A single golden giant was already more than enough to deal with the Crystal Wolf King. After including Kite's targeted strikes at the Wolf King's weak points, the Crystal Wolf King immediately fell into an absolute disadvantage. In the end, it could only accept its fate, serving as a punching bag. It seems my plans were unnecessary. Feng laughed involuntarily as he looked at the Crystal Wolf King's constantly decreasing HP. He finally got to experience how those players had felt when they obtained a dark gold guard of their own. Initially, he had still planned on taking action himself. Now, however, it would seem that his plans were utterly superfluous. If he were to join the fray as well, he would be bullying the Crystal Wolf King. However, he had to admit that it indeed felt awesome to have a dark gold guard. He could practically level up even while lying down and doing nothing. Even if he were a player who did not know how to fight, he could simply rely on his personal guard to help him level up. It's no wonder those players back then had invested all their money into nurturing these dark gold guards. Feng could not help but think back to those players who had been lucky enough to obtain dark gold guards in the past. It turns out that the difference in strength is actually so massive. Logically, if one possessed such a powerful guard, grinding, leveling up, and earning money should be a piece of cake. After all, field bosses were practically walking ATMs to players with dark gold guards. Generally, guilds would have to organize large expeditions to raid these powerful field bosses. They even had to make enormous sacrifices to take down these bosses. On the other hand, the only task players with dark gold guards had to do was search for field bosses. They could leave everything else to their personal guards to handle. Even if it took 2 or 3 days to locate a single field boss, once they killed the boss, its loot would be all theirs for the keeping. Their income would definitely be far above that of experts of God's domain. Yet, in the past, any player that possessed a relatively good personal guard in God's domain was extremely poor. This was because these personal guards were no different from a bottomless pit. If the equipment and skills of a personal guard did not improve along with the increase in their levels, then raiding field bosses of the same level would become much more dangerous. After all, unlike NPCs, monsters didn't need equipment. As long as their levels increased, their attributes would increase significantly as well. In contrast, a personal guard's strength was not dependent on just their attributes. They also relied heavily on their equipment and skills. They needed to continually improve themselves in order to go up against bosses of the same level. When players died, at worst they would lose a single level and a piece of equipment. However, the death of personal guards was different. Not only would they lose many levels, but their revival would also take a very long time. Not to mention, the cost of reviving personal guards could sting even top-tier experts. Hence, to reduce the possibility of their guards dying, players in the past would try to increase the strength of their personal guards as much as possible. Time flowed by quickly, while under the observation of Feng and the others. Since Blue Bamboo had dispelled all the gain buffs cast by the Crystal Wolf King on itself, its HP quickly fell to 30%. Right just then, the Wolf King's crimson eyes suddenly gave off a bloody glow, its half-transparent crystal body gradually turning crimson as well. Blue, hurry up and use the scroll. Rain, you and I will join the battle. Feng instructed hurriedly. Once the Crystal Wolf King's HP fell below 30%, it would stop using the Tier 2 buff skill and start using the Tier 3 gain skill instead. Just the first stack of the buff could increase the Wolf King's strength and speed by 10%, while subsequent stacks would further enhance its strength and speed by 10%, up to a maximum of 30 stacks. In other words, the Crystal Wolf King's strength and speed could increase by as much as 300%. At that point, even a Grand Lord of the same level would not be a match for it. Hence, they needed to finish off the Crystal Wolf King before things got out of hand. Only its gain buff stacked up very quickly. It would gain a stack once every 10 seconds. If nobody removed this buff, in just 2 minutes' time, the Crystal Wolf's strength could rival a Grand Lord. Got it? At this time, Blue Bamboo retrieved a magic scroll from her bag and began amplifying her dispel. As the first stack of buff got removed, Feng activated Heavenly Dragon's power and began attacking from the Crystal Wolf King's side. Thundering Flash. Chop. Earth Splitter. Thunder Flame Explosion. One skill after another landed on the Crystal Wolf King, each one dealing around -10,000 to -20,000 damage to the Great Lord. In contrast, Thoughtful Rain was not faring particularly well. The Crystal Wolf was an elemental being, so it possessed relatively high magic resistance in addition to its own defense. Thoughtful Rain's attacks very rarely dealt over -3,000 damage to the Great Lord. When the Crystal Wolf King's HP fell below 3 million, Kite executed the Tier 2 Taboo skill, Hurricane's Descent. Anna also stopped holding back as she cast the Tier 2 curse, Judgment of Light. A gray cyclone promptly appeared in the sky, and like a sharp blade, it stabbed directly at the Crystal Wolf King. As for Anna's Judgment of Light, when she completed the curse, it called forth a battle angel into the battlefield. The moment the battle angel appeared, she threw a sacred golden spear at the Wolf King. Boom. -1,045,137. -1,274,646. Instantly, 2 massive damages appeared above the Crystal Wolf King's head, forcing an agonized howl out of the Great Lord. The Wolf King then fell to the ground, its body paralyzed. It had obviously suffered massive injuries from the 2 attacks and entered a weakened state for a short period. The tremendous amounts of damages thoroughly stunned Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. Naturally, Feng would not let this golden opportunity pass. He immediately activated Divine Providence followed by Flame Burst. When he finished executing his 15 consecutive attacks, the Crystal Wolf King collapsed to the ground, its body completely motionless. Chapter 849, Alchemy Equipment. With the Crystal Wolf King's death, everyone's experience bars rose by a large margin. Feng reached 41% of level 40, while Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo were now only 20% away from level 40. They would have to grind for just one more day at most to bridge this final gap. However, compared to the EXP they obtained, Feng paid much more attention towards the Wolf King's loot. The Crystal Wolf King was the guardian monster of this map. Moreover, this was the first time it had been killed. Its loot would naturally be much more bountiful than usual. Sure enough, among the 10 items dropped, 5 were rare materials. As for the remaining 5, 3 were level 50 fine gold equipment and 1 was the crystal heart that Thoughtful Rain required. With this crystal heart, she would be able to proceed to the next phase of her quest. The Witch's Sin was a chain legacy quest with a total of 5 phases. Unlike other legacy quests, where one simply had to obtain a legacy tool and activate it, the Witch's Sin allowed one to enter its legacy grounds and undertake the final trial only after the completion of a series of quests. It was much more troublesome than the legacy quests of other hidden classes. However, it was also one of the easiest legacies to encounter. Sure enough, the loot this time is good. Feng smiled as he held up a deep blue crystal bottle. This crystal bottle was neither a weapon nor equipment that combat players sought. Instead, it was an item that was in demand among lifestyle players, particularly alchemists, because this crystal bottle was alchemy equipment. Azure Ocean Crystal Bottle, Alchemy Equipment, Secret Silver Rank. Increases the alchemy success rate by 5%. Although the crystal bottle only increased the success rate of alchemy procedures by 5%, for comparison, a complete set of mysterious iron alchemy equipment provided a total increase of only 8%. Meanwhile, the complete Azure Ocean set could increase the alchemy success rate by 12%. It was a set that was highly desirable even to master alchemists. Although Feng currently had only a single bottle, this item would suffice to help an intermediate alchemist get promoted to advanced alchemist quickly. After reaching the advanced alchemist standard, an alchemist could begin producing all sorts of rare intermediate potions such as the intermediate fire resistance potion and intermediate ice resistance potion. The value of these potions would skyrocket once the Eclipse Gate opened. Unfortunately, the Candlelight trading firm simply had too few advanced alchemists at the moment. Now that Feng had obtained a piece of the Azure Ocean set, it would help a lot in addressing this problem. After killing the Crystal Wolf King, Feng did not remain idle. Instead, he led Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo around the Crystal Forest, killing chieftains and lords, using this opportunity to gather the other set pieces of the Azure Ocean set. Finally, around the time when the soul lock on Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo disappeared, he obtained an Azure Ocean test tube, which increased the alchemy success rate by 3%, after killing a Lord-ranked boss. Feng lacked just 2 more to complete the set. However, seeing as it was getting late, he had to bring Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo back to the city first. As for the remaining 2 set pieces, he could only put off collecting them for the future. White River City, at an open-air restaurant close to the Candlelight trading firm. Players and horse carriages constantly traveled down the street outside the restaurant, every one of these players in a hurry to raise themselves to level 40. All of this was due to the sudden appearance of a mount in White River City. This incident had whetted the appetites of White River City's players for mounts. At the same time, the number of players trying to join Zero Wing had further increased. Previously, everyone had considered mounts to be just another mode of transportation. However, after seeing the demonic flame tiger, everyone came to understand one thing. Mounts could also assist players in battle. This was especially true for a mount like the demonic flame tiger. Its mere presence was enough to make one shudder. One could just imagine how much more help it could provide in combat. That tiger mount sure is cool. It would be great if I could have one as well. Stop dreaming. Someone on the forums is offering to buy the mount for 8 million credits right now. Even so, many people are still ridiculing that person. Ridicule? What? That's 8 million credits we're talking about. If I had that much money, I wouldn't have to work for the rest of my life. If I were the owner of the tiger mount, I would definitely sell it. Do you think that mount is worth only 8 million? Although some guilds have managed to get their hands on mounts as well, those mounts are just bronze rank, with very few being mysterious iron rank. Currently, rumor has it that the tiger mount might be a dark gold mount. If that's true, it's the highest ranked mount currently known in God's domain. Instead of it being just a mount, it is a symbol of one's identity. Most likely, 8 million credits isn't even worth 10% of that mount. These people are just insane. I'm having a headache just trying to earn 40 gold. Who knows when I'll be able to save up that much money? It would be great if the mounts were cheaper. Of course, there is a cheaper alternative. A guild mount costs only 25 gold. However, you'll need to join a guild with a stable first. Currently, Zero Wing is the only guild in God's domain that has a stable. The number of players trying to join Zero Wing every day has nearly filled up Zero Wing's residence to the point of bursting. If I had known something like this would happen, I would have tried to join Zero Wing sooner. Zero Wing really is amazing. Right now, even super guilds have yet to construct their own stables, but Zero Wing has done so already. In a few years' time, Zero Wing might even become a new super guild. While the players on the street were busy chatting, a handsome young man wrapped in a black cloak wore a gloomy expression on his face as he sat in the open-air restaurant. Zero Wing sure is something. It's no wonder they dared to oppose King's return, the tall and beautiful woman seated beside the handsome youth said, a faint smile on her face. It's been too long since our guild has made a move. It seems that people have started to forget how frightening we actually are. In the minds of ordinary players, super guilds were merely guilds with long histories and plenty of experts. They did not understand the truly formidable aspect of super guilds. The reason why super guilds were powerful was not because of their large number of experts and vast resources, but more due to the quality of their experts. The Falcon Legion sent to kill the core members of Zero Wing was the best proof. The Falcon Legion was a legion of experts King's return had secretly nurtured. Every member of the Falcon Legion could rank among the top experts of a first-rate guild. The more powerful members were even in the refinement realm already. Going up against multiple top-tier experts of first-rate guilds at the same time would be a piece of cake for these refinement realm experts. Now, not only had King's return sent a 20-man team after Zero Wing's core members, but the guild had also assigned Coral, one of the team leaders of the Falcon Legion, to lead it. In addition, Ordinary Stranger and Thunder Tiger even accompanied the team. Both these men were refinement realm experts. With such a force, annihilating Zero Wing's core members would be child's play. Of course, King's return's intention was not to exterminate Zero Wing but to give it a warning. Hopefully Zero Wing will learn their lesson after this little warning. If they still dare to stand against me, their core members won't be the only ones to die next time, Fiend stated, a cold glint flashing across his eyes. Sindhart has already departed from his guild residence and is currently heading over. It should be time for us to meet that guild leader of Zero Wing. It would indeed be difficult for King's return to thoroughly exterminate Zero Wing in one fell swoop. However, other methods could be used to deal with the guild slowly. The simplest way was to repeatedly kill the upper echelons of the guild. If the guild's upper echelons were frequently killed, their deaths would negatively impact the growth of the guild. If the situation was prolonged, guild members would lose faith in their upper echelons. In the end, members would start quitting, which would in turn weaken the guild. This was also the reason why the various guilds were afraid of super guilds. Just as Fiend was about to head to the candlelight trading firm, 20 cloaked players appeared before him. These 20 players were none other than Ordinary Stranger's group. Well, did you finish the mission? Fiend asked softly as he looked at Ordinary Stranger, who stood in the lead. Chapter 850 Fiend's shock. Why are you all quiet? Fiend asked sternly as he looked at Ordinary Stranger's team, which remained silent. However, Fiend's follow-up question still failed to elicit a reply from Ordinary Stranger and the others. Instead, their heads hung even lower, their complexions becoming extremely gloomy. Did you or did you not complete the mission? Have you all become mute? Fiend asked suspiciously. Whether it was Ordinary Stranger or Thunder Tiger, both of them were usually chatterboxes. Yet now neither of them had uttered even a single word. How could he not find this situation odd? After a long period of silence, Coral finally stepped forward and answered in a low tone, "We didn't complete the mission." "You didn't complete the mission?" Fiend was momentarily stunned. He then looked at Coral and demanded in a deep tone, "Tell me exactly what happened." Following which, Coral and Ordinary Stranger made a full report to Fiend. After hearing their recollection, Fiend fell silent. Praying Lotus, the beautiful level 39 oracle dressed in sacred white robes who was standing beside Fiend, also revealed an astonished expression. The reason for her astonishment was not because Coral and the others had died. Instead, it was because of who had ambushed them. Although Ordinary Stranger had guessed that the cloaked man was Black Flame, Coral had personally seen the cloaked man's true appearance, and he could say with 100% certainty that their ambusher was Yi Feng. Yi Feng was someone who had long since entered the list of targets to pay attention to of super guilds and super first-rate guilds. He was ridiculously strong. Even if Fiend were to take action himself, the outcome of the fight would be uncertain. Fiend's chances of suffering defeat might even be higher than Yi Feng's. Hence, it came to her as no surprise that Yi Feng had killed Coral and the others. If this were normal times, she could still chalk it up to Coral and the others having extremely bad luck. Unfortunately, things were not as simple as just having bad luck, and this was the part that gave her and Hellfiend a headache. The movements of the Falcon Legion were kept top secret. Even Hellfiend himself had been in the dark. For the mission this time, only the 20 players on the team had known the details. Hence, before the team had made its move, it was impossible for Zero Wing to have known about the ambush. Moreover, when Coral and the others had taken action, they had even used Soul Lock on their targets. Their ambush targets had no way to get news out unless they died and logged out of the game. As for Yi Feng appearing at that location by coincidence, that was also impossible. After all, Yi Feng had ridden around White River City on his mount for a long time, causing a huge commotion in the city. When Coral and the others took action, Yi Feng had still been in the city. Hence, Yi Feng's appearance at the Crystal Forest was definitely no coincidence. It was certain that he had only rushed to the rescue after finding out about the incident. However, just how far away was the Crystal Forest from White River City? By the time Yi Feng arrived there, even with a mount, the Falcon Legion should have long since finished their targets. Yet that was not the case. Not only had Yi Feng slaughtered the Falcon Legion, but he had even managed to save his companions. The speed of his mobilization was simply staggering. This meant that dealing with the members of Zero Wing would be much more troublesome in the future. If they were not careful, they might even end up suffering a huge loss. However, they also could not afford to send out their guild's apex experts. These people usually had their own tasks to handle. How could they possibly have the time to play around with an upstart guild? Moreover, if they really did dispatch these experts, doing so would turn their guild into a laughingstock for other super guilds. It's no wonder even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is helpless against Zero Wing. It turns out that they still have such a card to play. Good. Very good. Hellfiend exclaimed, his mouth twitching in anger. This move of Zero Wing had foiled his plans considerably. Hellfiend, are we still going to meet with Black Flame? Praying Lotus asked. Their initial plan had been to teach Zero Wing a lesson and let the guild know what kind of consequences awaited it should it offend King's return. Now with the Falcon Legion's defeat, they naturally lost their deterrent against Zero Wing. Go. Of course we're going. If Sindhart thinks he can get that sum of money, he can forget about it. Hellfiend declared, bloodlust shining in his eyes. With a resolute tone he added, since we can't do this subtly, we'll just use force to convince Zero Wing. I don't believe an upstart guild with no backing won't submit to King's return. Saying so, Hellfiend had ordinary stranger contact Zero Wing. White River City's teleportation hall. Suddenly, several white flashes appeared inside the building as Feng and the others returned to White River City once again. What a pity. It would be great if we could continue grinding for a few more hours, Blue Bamboo said in disappointment as she looked at her own experience bar. During their time following Feng around, their leveling speed simply left one speechless. With 2 personal guards capable of overwhelming a great lord present, dealing with those chieftain and lord-ranked monsters was extremely relaxing. The crystal wolves they slaughtered as they traveled around the crystal forest also boosted their experience bars significantly. Currently, she was only 5% away from reaching level 40. At most, she would need an hour's worth of grinding to bridge that final gap. Level 40 was a relatively major milestone in God's domain. Throughout their travels, Blue Bamboo had eyed Feng's demonic flame tiger with longing. Unfortunately, she had yet to reach level 40, so she could not even give riding Feng's mount a try. In God's domain, mounts could generally carry 2 people at the same time. If a mount was of a sufficiently high rank, it could even accommodate 3 people at once. A dark gold mount like the demonic flame tiger could bear a maximum of 3 people. However, the riders had to be level 40 or above. After exiting the teleportation hall, Feng summoned the demonic flame tiger once again. The demonic flame tiger's cool and massive body immediately attracted the gazes of the passers-by. I still have something to take care of, so I'll be leaving first. If you encounter any problems in your quest again, just contact me or Aqua and the others, Feng said as he jumped onto his mount. He gave the demonic flame tiger a tap and then sped towards the candlelight trading firm. After Feng departed, the players on the streets promptly shifted their gazes towards Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. Are those 2 beauties members of Zero Wing? I saw them talking to that mount riding person just now. Could that expert be a member of Zero Wing? All sorts of ideas started popping up in people's minds. Many beautiful female players also started looking at thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo with eyes filled with envy and admiration. Although they were acquainted with many experts compared to Feng, those experts were simply noobs. On the other hand, thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo actually managed to make friends with an expert like Feng. It would be great if I can get a mount that's as cool as Big Brother Yifeng's. At that time, my classmates will definitely die of jealousy, Blue Bamboo said as she looked at Feng's departing figure admiringly. However, thoughtful Rain, who stood beside Blue Bamboo, did not have such thoughts in her mind. Instead, she was currently pondering how she could go about improving her strength. Feng's battles had truly widened her horizons. She had never imagined that there would actually be such a huge difference between players. Candlelight Trading Firm, second floor reception room. Hell Fiend, are you really going to do it? Praying Lotus asked, a frown on her face. If you do so, we'll suffer significant losses as well. I've already said that I absolutely will not let Sindheart get that money. If Black Flame is really resolute in opposing me, I will let him know what regret tastes like. Let's see if he thinks opposing me just for a stranger like Sindheart is worth it or not. Hell Fiend sneered and nodded decisively. As Hell Fiend and Praying Lotus were waiting quietly, the doors to the room opened suddenly. Feng, who was currently in the guise of Black Flame, slowly walked up to Hell Fiend and Praying Lotus. Chapter 851, Book of Disaster. So he is Black Flame? Hell Fiend began carefully observing Feng as the swordsman approached him. Although the general public did not have a clear grasp of Black Flame's strength, practically all experts from super guilds knew just how powerful the man was. Ranked 51st on God's Domain's experts list. Although the rankings on this list did not measure the exact strength of an expert, they were still useful as a reference. Someone ranked 51st on the list was unquestionably an expert who could rank at the top in any super guild. Moreover, the fact that Black Flame had managed to develop an upstart guild like Zero Wing to its current state showed that he was strong in more than just fighting. While Hell Fiend and Praying Lotus were observing Feng was also observing the two. Whether it was Hell Fiend or Praying Lotus, both of them had been very famous experts in the past. It was especially true for Hell Fiend. During the initial stages of God's Domain, he had already become an adjudicator of King's Return. The title of adjudicator was not just for show. It represented King's Return's apex combat power. Even the weakest adjudicator was a Void Realm expert. In addition, there was also an age restriction. Candidates for adjudicator could not be over 30. In other words, no one over 30 years old could take part in the exam to become an adjudicator. Hell Fiend had managed to become one at such a young age. 10 years later, he had even become a tier 6 mage god that everybody knew of. As for the female oracle, Praying Lotus, she was similarly very amazing. Although she could not compare to Hell Fiend, she had similarly been promoted into one of King's Return's adjudicators a year or so later. In the end, she had even become a tier 5 red priest. Her combat power back then had reached the peak of tier 5. She had been an existence that countless experts looked up to. Feng had never imagined that the two people looking to talk to him would be them. What business do you have with me? Feng asked in a deep tone as he looked at Hell Fiend. You can't be trying to get me to give up on the trade, right? Actually, we are. The reason we've come looking for you this time is indeed to have you give up on that exchange. If you give up now, our previous agreement will still take effect. Hell Fiend nodded. He then took out a tattered old book from his bag. Smiling confidently, he said, You can take a look at this thing here. If you are not willing to give up on the exchange, it won't be the Falcon Legion taking action the next time. Instead, I'll make use of this item. You don't wish to see any accidents happening to the stone forest town that you've arduously developed, right? This ancient book was very old. There didn't seem to be anything special about it. Its cover had long since been ruined. However, if one tried hard enough, one could still make out the faint words written on the book's cover. Abyss Summoning. The instant Feng saw these words, his heart involuntarily shook. This book was a nightmarish item in God's Domain. This book itself was a disaster. In God's Domain, the human race was constantly at war with the Abyss. However, it was not that easy for the Abyss to invade the continent of God's Domain. Abyssal monsters needed to travel through an Abyss passage to enter God's Domain en masse. It was extremely difficult to open an Abyss passage. Nevertheless, this ancient book could simply do so. This ancient book was an item monsters from the Dark Abyss had specifically sent over. The reason for doing so was to have the people residing on the continent of God's domain use it. The book would then act as a marker that allowed abyssal monsters to open a passage to God's domain much more readily. The opening of an abyss passage would mean that endless abyssal monsters would surge into God's domain. At that time, many kingdoms and empires would fall to the invasion. Feng had never dreamed that Fiend would actually possess this item. No wonder he's so confident. So he still has such a trump card. Feng was momentarily at a loss for words as he looked at the ancient book on the table. If an abyss passage opened close to Stone Forest Town, it would indeed bring about the destruction of the town. However, opening an abyss passage was no laughing matter. In the past, a player had similarly used one such ancient book to open an abyss passage. The abyssal monsters that came out had ended up destroying an entire kingdom and even spreading to several neighboring kingdoms. The Glory Empire was only a short distance away from Starmoon Kingdom. With the scope of the abyss passage, the Glory Empire would naturally suffer from the invasion. In such a case, King's Return would not escape unscathed either. However, this ancient book had one more secret that was not mentioned by the system. If you don't mind losing Stone Forest Town, you can go ahead and trade with Sindheart, Fiend laughed. This ancient book was extraordinarily precious. Originally, he had not intended to use it for such a matter. After all, it could be used to deal with other super guilds in the future. Now, however, with the situation as it was, he couldn't care less about wasting the book. However, he did not believe that Feng would be so foolish. How could a measly 5 plots of land possibly compare to Stone Forest Town? Contrary to Fiend's expectations, however, Feng shook his head and said very seriously, "Sorry, but I still refuse. If you wish to use this ancient book of yours, go ahead." When Praying Lotus heard Feng's reply, she stared at him with an expression of disbelief on her face. Thinking that the man did not understand the severity of the situation, she hurriedly exclaimed, "Guild leader Black Flame, you have to think this through carefully. That's Stone Forest Town we're talking about, not an NPC city. Do you think you can fend off an endless wave of abyssal monsters?" This ancient book was extraordinary. Just the price to activate the abyss passage would cost them significantly. It would be a complete waste to use it on a small guild like Zero Wing. "I've considered this very clearly. If you don't have anything else, please leave. I still have many things I need to tend to," Feng said. Then he stood up and left. At this time, both Fiend and Praying Lotus were stunned. A lunatic. Black Flame clearly had a mental problem. Or did he think they would not actually carry out their threat? Good. Black Flame, I applaud you. You are the first person to have earned my admiration since entering the virtual gaming world. Since you insist on doing so, I'll fulfill your wish then. I will definitely make you regret your decision today, Black Flame. Fiend laughed maniacally as he looked at Feng's receding back. "We're leaving." Following which, Fiend and Praying Lotus departed the candlelight trading firm. "Guild leader, will helping Sindheart really be worth it?" Aqua Rose asked curiously as she looked at Fiend's departing figure. She had watched everything that happened very clearly from a secret room beside the reception room. After all, 2 important figures from King's Return had come. How could the vice leader of Zero Wing possibly be absent from this situation? Although Sindheart was a good-natured person, they were merely acquaintances. If Feng were to abandon Stone Forest Town just because of a promise, it would be the epitome of foolishness. However, Aqua Rose also understood that it was precisely due to this personality of Feng's that she had agreed to join Zero Wing back then. If Feng were someone who readily bowed to threats, he wouldn't have so many people placing their trust in him right now. "Do you think I'm doing it just because of Sindheart?" Feng could not help but laugh. "If Fiend really does open up an abyss passage near Stone Forest Town, then I would have to thank him." "Thank him?" "The abyss passage will call forth an endless wave of abyssal monsters. How could Stone Forest Town possibly defend against so many monsters?" Aqua Rose asked, confused. "Gains and losses correspond in God's domain. That ancient book is both a disaster and an opportunity. Just like an epic quest, while terrific rewards are possible, the punishment for failure is similarly terrifying," Feng explained, smiling. "Hopefully Fiend doesn't disappoint me." Fiend could not know about the true secret of the ancient book. This secret was something that players had found out only after God's domain had experienced such disasters multiple times. Shortly after Hell Fiend and Praying Lotus left, Feng similarly departed the candlelight trading firm. However, to avoid attracting too much attention, Feng hailed an advanced horse carriage and headed towards the library. Previously, due to Thoughtful Rain's matter, he had not managed to deal with the Golden Tablet's quest. Now that he was done with that matter, he naturally could not leave the tablet quest alone. However, after arriving at the library, before Feng could head to the entrance of the building, a beautiful figure suddenly intruded into his path, blocking him. Taking a closer look, Feng discovered that the person blocking him was actually Yulan of Underworld. Guild leader Black Flame, you really are difficult to find. May I know if you have time for a private chat? Yulan asked softly, smiling as she looked at the cloaked Feng. Chapter 852 Sacred Grounds. Your ability to find someone is really amazing, Feng said. However, his attention was currently not on Yulan. Instead, he was surveying his surroundings. However, even after careful observation, nothing in particular drew his eye. He did not detect anybody trailing him. Moreover, in a city, many players chose to wear a black cloak to avoid exposing themselves. Hence, cloaked players were not an uncommon sight in a city. Despite that, Yulan had still managed to locate him. At this moment, Yulan wore a set of luxurious purple robes, a glowing silver staff clasped in her hand. The staff had many runes engraved on it, and Feng could faintly feel the ambient mana gathering around it. Yulan's level was similarly extraordinary. Currently, she was already a level 39 summoner. The current first-ranking player on Starmoon Kingdom's ranking list was only level 38, yet Yulan had already reached level 39. Her leveling speed was already on par with the experts of super guilds. Guild leader Black Flame is overpraising me. Why don't we find a quiet place to sit down and have a chat? Yulan revealed a meaningful smile. I have some intelligence that I know will certainly interest guild leader Black Flame. Intelligence that will interest me? Feng could not help but laugh when he heard Yulan saying so. He had already mingled in God's domain for over a decade already. In the past, he had even been the guild leader of a second-rate guild. The information he had regarding God's domain far surpassed that of any current player or guild. Right now, most likely, only the secrets gathered by super guilds could possibly interest him. Isn't guild leader Black Flame interested in the holy city of Titan? Yulan asked as she revealed a confident and provocative smile. How do you know about the holy city of Titan? Feng was greatly shocked as he looked at Yulan. The holy city of Titan was one of God's domain's major secrets. Even in the past, not many players had known about the holy city. It was a place that independent players had no chance of ever visiting. Even those who knew about the existence of the holy city would not necessarily be able to go there. Only an extremely few large guilds were capable of visiting it. Generally, only first-rate guilds and above had the ability to get to the holy city. Although Shadow had been a second-rate guild in the past, it was only after joining hands with many guilds, as well as having the powerful Immortal Light Guild of that time taking the lead, that Feng had managed to get a glimpse of the holy city of Titan. The holy city of Titan was originally a city where the Titans resided. It was once an extremely powerful city, capable of going up against even gods. However, after the war between the gods, the city had weakened significantly. Even so, it was still much more powerful than the current four great empires of God's domain, and was roughly Blackwing City's match and greatly respected by the various kingdoms and empires of God's domain. However, the holy city of Titan was different from Blackwing City. Blackwing City was more of a place for players to conduct trade at. Titan City, on the other hand, was a place meant for nurturing players. It had been titled a sacred training ground by many players. The reason for this was because the mana density at Titan City was much denser than in most locations in the outside world. Aside from being a sacred training ground for combat players, Titan City was also a sacred ground for lifestyle players. Due to the excellent environmental conditions there, lifestyle players would have their production success rates improved considerably. In addition, the chance of obtaining lifestyle designs at the grinding spots around Titan City was much higher than at other locations. Hence, many lifestyle players yearned to visit the holy city of Titan. However, Titan City was not a place that just any player could visit. Similar to Blackwing City, one needed to obtain a pass. However, the drop rate for Titan City's pass was much lower than Blackwing City's. Moreover, only level 30 100-man large-scale team dungeons or above had a chance of dropping the pass. Although Feng had thought of going to Titan City, until now, not a single team in Zero Wing had managed to obtain a pass for Titan City. In Feng's opinion though, this was a very normal occurrence. The drop rate for that item was simply too low. Obtaining it in level 30 or level 40 dungeons was practically impossible. Only after reaching level 50 would 100-man team dungeons have a slightly higher possibility of dropping the pass. Even so, the probability was only 1 in 1,000. In other words, one had to raid 1,100-man team dungeons to obtain a pass to Titan City. Moreover, the drop rate for the pass was unaffected by one's luck attribute. Hence, Feng had excluded the Holy City of Titan when thinking of ways to nurture guild experts. That method simply relied too heavily on luck. It seems guild leader Black Flame really does know about Titan City. That will make the following discussion easier. Yulan smiled. I have a pass to go to that place. Have I managed to catch your interest now? You've got me. Feng could not help but laugh. He had never imagined that this woman before him would actually be so capable. A pass to the Holy City of Titan. The value of this item far surpassed that of an epic weapon. In the past, some guilds had even been willing to pay 20,000 gold just for a pass. Unfortunately, no guild was willing to sell this item. After all, the value of going to Titan City was far above 20,000 gold. Following which, Feng followed Yulan to a high-class restaurant. The restaurant was located in the Nobles District, so the prices here were way beyond the means of independent players. As a result, Feng and Yulan were the only players within the restaurant. Inside a quiet VIP room on the second floor, Feng and Yulan quietly sat facing each other. Miss Yulan, I'm very curious. With Underworld's power, you guys should have a high chance of getting through the entrance trial. Why have you come looking to cooperate with me? Feng asked curiously. Guild leader Black Flame, surely you jest. Underworld has existed for a long time already. Like those super guilds, the power structure inside the organization is very complicated. Everyone has their own opinions and motives. For example, Feng Shenyang and I are under different superiors. How could Underworld possibly compare to a straightforward organization like Zero Wing? Yulan laughed. This Titan City's pass is something I just happened to chance upon. Nobody in the guild has found out about it yet. However, with my own abilities, it is very difficult to get through the entrance trial. In addition, I only have 3 chances to challenge the trial. I won't gain anything if I fail all 3 chances. Hence, I thought of asking for your help, Guild Leader Black Flame. So that's the case. Feng found Yulan's words readily convincing. After all, if even Ouroboros had faced such problems, what more an organization like Underworld? Then, what kind of remuneration are you prepared to give me in return for my help, Miss Yulan? Since Guild Leader Black Flame knows of the Holy City of Titan, you should also know of the value of a pass to the city. As long as we get through the entrance trial, I'll give 30 slots to you. How about it? Yulan said, gnashing her teeth in reluctance. A single pass could allow a maximum of 100 players into Titan City. However, the difficulty of Titan City's entrance trial was very high. With just her subordinates, she was unlikely to pass it. They needed the help of several powerful experts. Otherwise, she would not be willing to offer so many slots. That won't do. I want half. I can't help you if you don't give me half of the slots. Feng shook his head. Guild Leader Black Flame, this is simply daylight robbery. I am only trying to borrow a few experts from your guild, yet you want half of the slots. I might as well rely on myself to get through the trial if this is your price. Yulan countered as she glared at Feng. She had never imagined that Feng would be so black-hearted. If Feng were not someone known to keep his word, she would have long since sought out other experts. Then she wouldn't have to give away any of her limited slots. Just paying some coins would suffice. Chapter 853, Entrance Trial. Yulan took a deep breath. In a very determined tone, Yulan said, I'll offer 5 more slots at most. Based on her investigations, Titan City was an excellent location to nurture lifestyle players. Nowadays, the impact lifestyle players had on the game was increasing. The various large guilds were all investing heavily in lifestyle players in the hopes of nurturing many more powerful lifestyle players. It was especially true for forging and alchemy lifestyle players. In addition, enchanting, tailoring, engineering, and other fields were also becoming increasingly important in the game. If she could nurture a group of high-ranking lifestyle players, she could use them to earn large sums of money in the future. Hence, every slot to Titan City was of utmost importance, as these slots would become the capital for stabilizing and elevating her position in Underworld. I believe that Miss Yulan should have challenged the entrance trial once already. Otherwise you wouldn't have come looking for me. So, I'm sure you are very clear about how difficult the trial is. It is not a problem that can be resolved easily with just a few more experts. If you fail all 3 challenges, then the pass will automatically become invalid. At that time, not to mention 50 slots, you won't even get a single slot. Feng had no intention of changing his mind. The slots to enter the holy city of Titan were equally important to the candlelight trading firm. Moreover, the trading firm had many more members to nurture. A meager 35 slots were far from enough. Even if he missed out on this chance, at most, he would just have the Dark Gods Legion and the main force raid more 100-man team dungeons. In the various NPC cities in God's domain, even in imperial capitals, the only locations that could improve a lifestyle player's production success rate were workshops. However, Titan City was different. Aside from workshops, there were also research rooms meant for various lifestyle classes. Not only could these research rooms increase a player's improvement rate, but the production success rate increases were much higher than even in special workshops. As long as the candlelight trading firm nurtured a large number of advanced forgers and alchemists, it would be able to produce many more rare products, particularly strengthening devices and various items that increased fire and ice resistance. Since the time Feng left Blackwing City, the selling price of the strengthening device at the Blackwing auction house only increased and never decreased. As long as the item appeared in the auction house, someone would immediately purchase it. Previously, he thought that 2,000 pieces would be around the amount the market could stomach. Now, however, it seemed that even the additional 3,000 pieces he had scheduled to sell would not be enough to satisfy the market's appetite. Even before these 3,000 strengthening devices sold out, he had already accumulated over 30,000 gold. He was earning far more than his initial projections. At this moment, Feng could not help but wish he could make more strengthening devices. Obtaining the design for the item was not much of a problem. After all, he only needed to raid level 50 or above Great Lords to get them. With a godly skill like Divine Providence, 1 out of every handful of Great Lords he killed would definitely drop the design. The problem was that, even if he managed to obtain a large number of designs, the candlelight trading firm did not have that many advanced forgers to learn them. Are you absolutely confident of clearing the entrance trial? Yulan frowned. She had never imagined that Feng would have such a deep understanding of the entrance trial. The difficulty of Titan City's entrance trial was greater than even that of a 100-man team dungeon. Otherwise she would not have come looking for Feng. She would have long since monopolized the entry slots herself. I won't say absolutely, but I'm at least over 70% certain, Feng laughed. He had visited the holy city of Titan multiple times in his previous life, so he was very familiar with the holy city's entrance trial. The system set the difficulty of the trial based on the levels of the players undertaking it, so players would always feel that the trial's difficulty was the same, regardless of when they challenged it. Getting into Titan City depended on the overall strength of the team. With Zero Wing's current strength and his understanding of the trial, he was far more than just 70% certain of making it to Titan City. Yulan fell silent upon hearing Feng's words. Even with Underworld going all out, its chances of getting through the entrance trial was far from reaching 70%. Worse, if she were to attempt it with just her own team, her success rate would be 20% at most. Moreover, the pass gave only 3 chances to challenge the trial. She had already failed once. If she relied on her own team, it was simply impossible for them to get through it. Indeed, just as Feng had said, if she could not clear the trial, then this pass of hers would be worth nothing. Moreover, looking at Feng's calm and confident behavior, he did not seem to be boasting. Demand for advanced lifestyle players was continuously increasing nowadays. The sooner she could nurture more advanced lifestyle players, the greater the advantage she would hold in the future. She could not afford to sit still and wait for her team to grow stronger. In the end, Yulan could not help but sigh as she conceded, "All right. As long as you manage to clear the entrance trial, I'll give you 50 slots. However, I also have a condition. You need to clear the trial within 3 days." "Deal. I'll have to make some preparations first. I'll contact you when the time comes. Feng's thoughts paralleled Yolan's. The sooner they entered Titan City the better. Moreover, many rare designs were obtainable only at the holy city of Titan and nowhere else. Following which, the two of them established a contract between themselves. Shortly after Feng left, an assassin youth entered the VIP room. Fully garbed in silvery gray leather armor, this assassin should be roughly 18 or 19 years old, based on his appearance. However, his level was extremely high. He was actually level 38, far beyond the reach of ordinary experts right now. Big Sis Yulan, aren't we giving Zero Wing a little too much? That's 50 advanced lifestyle players we're talking about. Who knows how much money we'll have to spend to nurture that many advanced lifestyle players? Won't it be fine if we look to Heaven's Burial or the Star Alliance for help instead? These two guilds aren't beneath Zero Wing in terms of strength. Moreover, we also wouldn't have to pay such a huge price if we employ their help. The assassin youth was very furious about the conditions Feng proposed. The Star Alliance and Heaven's Burial more or less possess a connection with Underworld. If we get them to help us, the possibility of the others from Underworld finding out about Titan City is very high. However, we won't have such a problem with Zero Wing, Yulan said, shaking her head. Besides, Zero Wing is filled with experts. They'll have a much higher possibility of clearing the entrance trial. Being able to enter Titan City securely is much more important than saving a few more slots for ourselves. Although the assassin youth did not make any further retort to Yolan's words, he inwardly still felt very dissatisfied. Back when they had entered the entrance trial, they had all been brimming with confidence. They had all thought that the trial was just a small matter. However, once the battle began, they found out that their thoughts had been too optimistic. The entrance trial was not something a 100-man team dungeon could compare to. The two were on entirely different levels. Even if Zero Wing's experts challenged the entrance trial, the outcome would be the same. White River City's library. After Feng entered the library, he immediately made his way to the top floor of the building. Compared to the last time he had come here, the security in front of Starmoon Hall was much stricter. Tier 3 knights filled the place. Even his identity as a demon hunter would not have gotten him entry into the hall. If not for his identity as a Count of White River City, the most he would have been able to do now was stand at the entrance of the hall. Walking inside, Feng was immediately greeted by the sight of the white-robed Charlene sitting before a table and quietly observing a floating crystal ball. Magic arrays encircled her as she radiated an incredibly powerful aura. Even Feng found himself paralyzed when bathed in this aura. A fourfold magic array? An expression of disbelief appeared on Feng's face. It would be understandable if this pressure he was feeling was due to a domain released by an NPC. However, Charlene did not have her domain out right now. This pressure he was currently experiencing was only a side effect of the mana gathered at the magic array. Just what kind of spell is this? It is actually this strong. At this moment, there was an image displayed inside the crystal ball. Meanwhile, this image was none other than the scene of the Blackwing auction house under the effects of space freeze. The crystal ball had completely locked on to the appearance and aura of the mysterious youth back then. His every action was clearly replicated in the crystal ball. However, when the mysterious youth vanished from Blackwing City, the crystal ball suddenly cracked and shattered into countless tiny pieces. In the end, the broken fragments of the crystal ball ignited into silver flames before disappearing into nothingness. Chapter 854, Ancient Spell. Soul Fire. Feng's expression immediately tensed when he saw the burning flame. This was not his first time to encounter this flame. Soul Fire was a flame capable of causing great damage to players, inflicting extremely severe death penalties, even more severe than having their immortal soul absorbed. To put it simply, Soul Fire was a flame that players should avoid coming into contact with at all costs. As the crystal ball disintegrated into nothingness, the silver flames immediately transformed into a leopard over 2 meters tall. Burning silver flames covered the leopard's entire body, and wherever its forepaws stepped, the stone floor underfoot became molten magma. Anyone seeing this scene would feel their hearts shudder and would try to get as far as possible from the silver leopard. However, Feng could not run away even if he wanted to. The oppression of the fourfold magic array aside, the leopard itself was an extraordinary level 200 mythic monster, the equivalent of a level 200 tier 4 NPC. Such a monster could instantly kill any current player. Even if Feng were at his peak during his previous life, the only thing he could have done if he encountered such a monster was run away as fast as he could. Fortunately, this leopard formed from soul fire did not seem interested in Feng. Instead, its pitch-black eyes stared at Charlene, who was lounging on a reading chair. In the next moment, the leopard transformed into a streak of silver light as it pounced at Charlene. The leopard was so fast that Feng did not even manage to react before it appeared in front of her. "What a feisty little cat you are. I was just looking into your owner's movements, yet you actually came all this way to pick a fight," Charlene said, eyeing the silver leopard pouncing at her as if she was just looking at a cute little animal. Suddenly, her left arm turned into a blur as she grabbed the silver leopard by the scruff of its neck. In the next moment, something unbelievable happened. The silver leopard, which was originally over 2 meters tall, actually began shrinking at a rate visible to the naked eye, until it was no larger than a little kitten. No matter how hard it fought, it couldn't escape Charlene's grasp. The only thing it could do was bare its tiny fangs and swipe its puny paws at her while emitting threatening hisses. Following which, Charlene took out a crimson crystal ball and did a short chant. The silver leopard then transformed into a streak of light and entered the crystal ball. Trapped inside the crystal ball, the silver leopard still tried struggling, but its efforts were all for naught. It couldn't escape the bindings of the crimson ball. Feng was incomparably stunned as he witnessed this scene from a distance. Charlene had actually just played around with a level 200 mythic monster as if it were a toy. Rather than a tier 5 red priest, she seemed more on the level of a tier 6 god. "So you've come." After Charlene was done dealing with the silver leopard, her golden eyes slowly shifted towards Feng. Smiling faintly, she said, "After not meeting you for some time, I see that you've landed yourself in yet more trouble. Before you have even dealt with the matter of the Lord of Balrogs, you have earned yourself yet another curse. I really don't know whether you've been blessed by the goddess of fate, or fancied by the goddess of misfortune." "Cursed?" Feng frowned. He then gave himself a thorough look as well as checked his status window. However, he did not discover any abnormalities with himself. "Don't bother. Ordinary mortals won't be able to detect it." Charlene shook her head lightly. She then walked up to Feng. Stretching one of her flawless fingers towards him, she began drawing one line of divine runes after another. Like golden ribbons, the glorious golden divine runes wrapped around Feng. As the number of divine runes increased, the mana fluctuations surrounding him began weakening. After a short moment, his surroundings were devoid of mana. This form of mana nullification was different from the silencing skills used by players, which only froze the flow of mana. What Charlene used thoroughly erased the existence of mana. With the absence of mana in his surroundings, Feng felt as if his brain was suffering from oxygen deficiency. Momentarily, his vision blurred a bit. His mind grew somewhat dizzy as well, his control over his body dulling slightly. But in the next moment, a silver chain with the thickness of a finger appeared, extending from Feng's chest. When this chain went beyond the mana nullification field, it quickly became invisible once again as if it had never existed. "What's this?" Feng could not help his surprise. This was his first time seeing such a situation. Moreover, with the appearance of this chain, he could clearly feel himself continuously weakening. "This is your curse. This silver chain is a soul chain and it is bound to your soul. You can consider this a parting gift that mysterious youth left for you when he escaped," Charlene said, her cherry-red lips hooking up into a smile. Chuckling softly, she continued, "How about it? Are you feeling a little anxious now?" Feng could not help but roll his eyes at Charlene. Even if he were stupid, he could tell that this curse was no trifling matter. A single mistake could very well send him to the netherworld. Problems related to the soul were the most frightening thing to players. After all, failure to deal with such problems would not end with just suffering a simple death. It was very likely that his entire account would be crippled. How could he not feel anxious? "Can this curse be removed?" Feng asked. In response, however, Charlene spread her hands in a gesture of helplessness. "Even you can't remove it?" Feng was far more shocked now. Charlene was definitely one of the strongest NPCs he had ever encountered in his entire gaming career in God's domain. If even such an NPC was incapable of helping him, one could just imagine what a stinking pile of trouble he had landed himself in this time. "This thing here is a soul chain. It is a super spell that has been passed down since ancient times. I'm not a god, so how can I possibly remove it?" Charlene rolled her eyes at Feng. Snappily she continued, however, you don't have to fall into despair either. There are 2 methods to remove this curse of yours. The first method is to remove the curse using force, while the second method is to kill the person who placed this curse on you. Since you can't remove the curse, the only option left for you is to kill the person who had cursed you in the first place. Feng was immediately rendered speechless. He wanted to, but did he have this kind of ability? Not to mention himself during his peak, even a Tier 5 Apex expert would have a small chance of defeating that mysterious youth. Most likely, only Tier 6 God rank players would be capable of dealing with him. However, God's domain was currently in its infant stages. There was not a single Tier 2 player in existence yet. So, just where was he supposed to find Tier 6 players? Relax, I'm not telling you to kill that youth yourself. With this weak little body of yours, a sneeze from that person would blow you into smithereens. All you need to do is find his whereabouts. Charlene could not help but giggle as she eyed Feng's slightly ugly complexion. Although I've used a tracking spell, that person is extremely adept at hiding his trail. Even I can't locate him. However, you are different. The other end of the soul chain wrapped around your body is in his hands. As long as you follow the soul chain, you will be able to locate him easily. At that time, all you need to do is contact me. System: Legendary Quest Lost Magic accepted. Quest content: Locate the youth who has cursed you. Rewards unknown. But how will I find him? If I'm not inside this magic nullification field, I won't be able to see the chain at all. Feng was inwardly at a loss for words after hearing the very simplified system notification. Chapter 855, Absorbing Soul Fire. Upon hearing Feng say so, as if she had long since prepared for this, Charlene promptly handed the crimson crystal ball with the silver leopard inside it to him. With your current standard, sensing the soul chain is naturally impossible for you. However, this thing here can help you, Charlene said as she pointed at the imprisoned silver leopard. This thing is a soul beast formed using soul fire. As long as you absorb its soul fire, you will naturally be capable of seeing the soul chain. Will I be able to control soul fire if I absorb it? Feng could not help but grow excited as he looked at the imprisoned leopard. But how can I possibly absorb it? It's a sentient Tier 4 being, not a mysterious flame. Soul fire. It was the nightmare of countless players. Back at the Dark Den, Feng had witnessed the Great Demon Nettle using soul fire to instantly reduce Discipline Paradise to level 0, forcing the Guardian Knight to restart his progress in the game. Meanwhile, soul fire could be categorized into 2 types: Black Destruction and Silver Creation. The one used by the Great Demon Nettle was Black Soul Fire, which possessed frighteningly destructive power. As for the soul fire before Feng, it was of creation. Although it was not as powerful as Black Soul Fire in terms of attack power, it possessed the ability to alter and mend souls. Both of these 2 flames were mysterious flames that were exceptionally hard to come by. As far as Feng knew, no player had managed to control either kind of soul fire, even after a decade had passed in God's domain. If a player truly managed to control a soul fire, regardless of which type it was, they would become the nightmare of all other players. They would become an existence much more frightening than even a player capable of absorbing immortal souls. Now that Feng had a chance to absorb such a flame, how could he not get excited? Absorb a soul beast? Charlene laughed involuntarily. Are you tired of living? With your body, aren't you afraid of exploding? I'm having you absorb only the soul fire this soul beast is releasing right now. However, even if it is just radiated soul fire, there's no way you can absorb it with your current standard. The outcome will be the same even though you possess an immortal soul. I do know another method that can help you absorb the radiated soul fire. Only, you need to search for a mysterious flame to do so. Moreover, it needs to be a Tier 2 mysterious flame at the very least. Otherwise, you won't be able to suppress the power of the soul fire and will end up burned to ash. Hence, the only one thing you need to do now is find a bunch of Tier 2 mysterious flames. If you manage to absorb the soul fire, you will also be able to weaken the corrosion effect the soul chain has on your soul. That will buy you time to search for that mysterious youth. Otherwise, with the current state of the soul chain, you only have another 27 days before you become that person's puppet. Well, there's nothing to worry about even if you fail to find that person. At that time, I'll personally grant you relief, permanently erasing you from this world. At the very least, you won't have to become that person's puppet. I only have 27 days if I don't have the weakening effect of the soul fire? Feng frowned slightly. He had never thought that he would have so little time. Who knew where that mysterious youth had gone to hide? After all, the place the mysterious youth had disappeared from was Blackwing City. He could very well appear in any country in God's domain. He might not even be in any country in God's domain. He might have distanced himself far away from human society and traveled to a remote place like the top of the world. God's domain was simply too massive. Even with a chain guiding him, locating the mysterious youth in just 27 days was impossible. That's right. Hence, you need to absorb Tier 2 mysterious flames or above and absorb the soul fire as soon as possible. This way you'll have a little more time. Charlene nodded. Very seriously, she continued, "Alright, hurry up and go search for Tier 2 or above mysterious flames. When you've managed to absorb one, come and find me. I'll tell you how you can absorb the soul fire. It's fine as long as it is a Tier 2 mysterious flame." Saying so, Feng summoned the ice blue devil flame. A dark blue flame immediately manifested above his right palm, its appearance causing the ambient temperature to decrease gradually. To forgers and alchemists, mysterious flames were priceless treasures. Unlike top-tier weapons and equipment, which could be obtained easily through raiding dungeons and field bosses or completing quests, one needed to investigate every map carefully to locate a mysterious flame. Finding one within a short span of time was not a feasible task. Besides which, a Tier 2 mysterious flame was something capable of inciting a great war between various large guilds. It was not something that could be found in just 20-odd days. Even super guilds would barely be capable of such a feat. Fortunately, Feng had known the exact whereabouts of the ice blue devil flame and had secured it for himself as soon as possible. Otherwise this quest would truly be his doom. Thinking about it now, he had indeed made a wise decision to secure the ice blue devil flame back then. When Charlene saw the deep blue burning flame, an expression of surprise appeared on her face. The ice blue devil flame, a Tier 2 mysterious flame. This is a flame that only places filled with death are capable of producing. Just how did you manage to obtain it? Charlene asked, greatly surprised as she looked at Feng. I just happened to discover it when I was traveling by the 100 Ghost Forest. Feng gave a casual reply. You really have been blessed by the goddess of fate. The 100 Ghost Forest was cursed by the legendary Black Witch. That Black Witch was a considerably amazing existence, and only a step away from becoming a god. The curse on the 100 Ghost Forest might not be a problem to a weakling like you, but to powerhouses, that place is an absolute forbidden ground due to the curse. Charlene could not restrain her laughter. Since you already possess the ice blue devil flame, then you indeed possess the qualifications to absorb the soul fire. There are two things you need to do when absorbing the soul fire. The first thing is control the ice blue devil flame and have it wrap around the radiated soul fire. You need to envelop the soul fire completely. There must not be even the tiniest of leaks. If you fail to do so and get contaminated by the soul fire, even though you are a heaven-blessed individual, you will similarly suffer. The second thing you need to do is the most crucial part when absorbing the soul fire. After you have completely contained the soul fire, you have to absorb it into your body. Afterwards, you need to fuse the ice blue devil flame with the soul fire. However, the soul fire is too strong. The fusion needs to be a certain ratio. If the proportion of soul fire is too high, the merged flame will damage you. If it is too low, you won't be able to display the power of the soul fire. Balance is a must. As for how to achieve that balance, you will have to depend on yourself for that. I will set up a magic array to carry out this fusion for you. While inside this magic array, you'll have an easier time guiding this fusion. Once you grasp that sensation, you'll have a much easier time wielding the soul fire's power in the future. After saying so, Charlene began reciting incantations as her hand drew line after line of divine runes continuously. A short moment later, the several thousand lines of divine runes drawn transformed into a golden fourfold magic array, brightly illuminating the entire hall. Alright, give it a try, Charlene said as she pointed at the golden magic array on the ground, an exhausted cast to her face. Evidently, forming this fusion magic array had not been as easy as she made it look. Chapter 856, Basic Control. Star Moon City, Teleportation Hall. A group of cloaked players suddenly appeared inside the building. Standing at the head of this group were an uncloaked young man and woman. The instant these two appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of many players. Aren't they Hell Fiend and Praying Lotus, experts of King's Return? Why would they appear here? As expected of a super guild. Their levels and equipment are simply too amazing. Both of them are fully equipped in level 35 dark gold equipment. That staff Fiend is carrying is actually epic ranked. The difference between us is just too massive. I wonder when I'll be able to wear a full set of level 35 secret silver equipment? Could King's Return be looking to develop in Starmoon Kingdom? Experts of King's Return were practically big-time celebrities in the virtual gaming world. Not to mention, neither Fiend nor Praying Lotus had bothered to hide the special effects of their equipment. Hence, many players quickly managed to determine the ranks of the two's equipment, which immediately prompted a discussion among the onlookers as they cast envious gazes at the two experts. Currently, mainstream players had yet to reach even level 35. Only the elite players of large guilds had mostly attained this level. Being able to have a complete set of secret silver equipment was also a very amazing achievement already, yet these two experts from King's Return, a super guild, had already reached level 39. They even sported the current best weapons and equipment from head to toe. An epic weapon. This was definitely the first time these ordinary players had seen such an item. There had been no news of such a weapon appearing in the entire Starmoon Kingdom. One could just imagine how frighteningly powerful a super guild was. Fiend and Praying Lotus paid no attention to the looks they were receiving as they walked directly towards an outgoing teleportation array. Ha, look who it is. Fiend came to an abrupt halt, his gaze shifting towards an elementalist waiting to use a teleportation array. Fiend? Why are you here? The elementalist youth also noticed Fiend. Suddenly, as if something occurred to him, his expression immediately darkened as he asked, "Could you be trying to threaten Zero Wing?" "Sind, it seems your luck is quite good. You actually managed to find a trustworthy ally. However, don't celebrate too soon. Your fate has long since been determined. Nothing will change no matter how much you struggle," Fiend sneered in disdain. He then turned away and left. A trustworthy ally? Sind's heart hid his confusion as he looked at Fiend's departing figure. Could Zero Wing have rejected Fiend's offer? He had never seen Fiend lose his composure to such an extent before. Inwardly, he breathed out a sigh of relief. The goodwill he felt towards Zero Wing also increased significantly. Not many people would dare to resist King's Return, much less offend the Super Guild just for a stranger. Fiend, are you really going to use the ancient book? Seeing Fiend's hurried steps, Praying Lotus anxiously advised, "Don't let your anger get to your head. Even if you utilize the ancient book's power, Sindheart will still get that sum of money. At that time, you will have wasted the true value of the ancient book." "Of course I know this. Lotus, do you actually think I've let my anger overwhelm me? I haven't forgotten our primary goal in coming here. Although I said I was going to utilize the ancient book's power, when did I say that I was going to use it on Stone Forest Town?" Fiend's mouth hooked up into an evil smile. "At that time, whether it is Black Flame or Sindheart, both of them will suffer. You're not using it on Stone Forest Town?" While Praying Lotus was happy that Fiend was not letting his anger get the better of him, his words also confused her. Stone Forest Town was Zero Wing's treasure trove. If they destroyed the town, they could undoubtedly deal Zero Wing a severe blow, wiping away one of the guild's major advantages in Starmoon Kingdom. But if Fiend was not planning on using the ancient book on Stone Forest Town, just what was his intended target? "You'll see when the time comes." Fiend smirked. Inside White River City's library, Feng continued to try to fuse the Ice Blue Devil Flame and the Soul Fire. However, the difficulty of merging two mysterious flames was extremely high. Despite numerous attempts, Feng still ended up with only failure. The first step of wrapping the Ice Blue Devil Flame around the small bundle of Soul Fire was no problem for Feng. At this point, Feng could control the Ice Blue Devil Flame like an extension of his arms and legs. Feng had already reached the Void Realm, so his perception towards his surroundings was already flawless. Hence, completely containing the Soul Fire was a walk in the park for him. However, the second step, which was the fusion of mysterious flames, was extremely difficult. Fusing the flames in the correct ratio was many times more challenging than threading a string through a needle hole. It was meaningless if Feng fused too little Soul Fire with the Ice Blue Devil Flame. However, if the proportion of Soul Fire was even a tiny bit too much, it would scorch him. At that time, not only did he suffer excruciating pain, but he also fell into a weakened soul state, causing his basic attributes to decrease. Each time he got burned by the Soul Fire, he would lose 1% of his basic attributes. Although 1% was not much after numerous failures, the accumulated amount was still very frightening. Currently he had already failed 34 times in a row, which diminished his basic attributes by 34%. Fortunately, this reduction was not permanent, only temporary. Even so, he would have to wait 2 natural days to recover fully. This really is difficult. After experiencing many failures, Feng had more or less identified the ratio required to maintain a balance. However, knowing the fusion ratio was one thing. Accurately fusing the flames in correct proportion was another thing altogether. In the future, if he had to go through a similar process to utilize the soul fire without the assistance of the fusion magic array, the difficulty would be more than 10 times higher. For example, if his permitted margin of error with the magic fusion array was at 0.1%, then without it, his margin of error would only be 0.1%. It would be significantly more difficult for him to utilize the soul fire's power. After all, players were not machines. They couldn't achieve such precision. It was the same even if Feng's brain activity had already improved substantially. Only now did Feng understand why, even after a decade had passed in God's domain, despite there having been a few God-ranked experts who had managed to obtain soul fires, not a single one of them had managed to truly control the soul fire they had. If he was already having so much trouble controlling just a strand of the soul fire's power, just how difficult was it to completely control the soul fire? However, after going through so many attempts, Feng had also gained something else. And that was control. Before this, Feng had only been focused on improving his control over his own body and the surrounding environment, always thinking of ways to push his 5 senses to their very limits. However, he had always done so through actual life and death battles. He had never truly calmed his heart. He had never noticed before, but now that he was paying attention he realized that his previous way of controlling his body and the surrounding environment seemed somewhat barbaric. Previously, he had been just like a sprinter, constantly placing an ultra-high load on his body while he fought. His control had no smoothness or flexibility whatsoever. However, after experiencing the fusion process multiple times, his control over his body had subtly improved. He could now extend and retract his power much more smoothly and naturally than before. This unexpected benefit overjoyed Feng. He had never imagined that he would gain such a bonus from combining 2 mysterious flames. With the continuous improvement of his control, Feng finally succeeded in merging the Ice Blue Devil Flame and Soul Fire on his 45th try. System, congratulations. You have gained basic control over the Soul Fire. You are now able to utilize the basic abilities of the Soul Fire. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.